like to call the meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock. Welcome to the meeting of the Harwich Board of Appeals on this date, April 23rd. The purpose of this meeting is to hear and decide applications before the Board of Appeals, which have been brought pursuant to the bylaw of the town of Harwich and the Massachusetts Zoning Enabling Act. As required by law, the town may audio or video record this meeting, which we are. Any person intending to either audio or video record this open session is required to inform the chair. During this meeting, the chair will recognize promptly a member of the board, the secretary, and attorneys presenting the case to inform the chair if a protocol is not being followed. While open session, those wishing to present comments or ask questions regarding this case are requested to fill out the information form on the podium, which I believe is there. But before we actually begin tonight's hearing, I have a couple of thoughts to go over with you. First one is, I want to leave you this thought tonight. Our town depends upon volunteers. No, this is my, no, it's not. Oh, it's okay. I'm going to do that. Don't worry about that.
Sorry.
You know, when I said you could interrupt any time, I really didn't mean it.
Trying to follow the script. Right?
Okay, all right, okay. So, let me try that again. I want to leave you this thought on our town depends upon volunteers. Every board and committee is powered not by experts from somewhere else, but by neighbors like you who step forward. I know some people hesitate, maybe the issues feel too complicated or too controversial, but that's exactly why your voice is needed. Hard decisions become better decisions when more perspectives are at the table. You don't have to have all the answers, just a willingness to listen, to learn, and to care about our community. Volunteering isn't always easy, but it's rewarding. It connects you, it teaches you, and leaves a legacy of service. So if you ever thought someone should do something about this, that someone can be you. I invite you to step up, sign up, and help shape the future of our town. Our Board of Appeals needs more members, as do most our committees. And I especially want to take this opportunity to introduce our new board member, David Wilson, and thank him for stepping up to the plate and contributing to both this board and Harwich with his service. Thank you, David.
Pleasure to be here, thank you.
Last week, members of the Board of Appeals toured the entire Affordable Trust site, including the land Penrose has proposed to develop. I want to thank the members of the Affordable Trust, Brendan Lowry and Mike McCaskill, for their assistance, as well as several Oak Street neighbors who joined us on that tour. I want to especially recognize those neighbors and emphasize the importance of community involvement in this process. At the site review, the residents may have hoped to be engaged in dialogue, but under open meeting rules, I cannot address questions or comments, and suggested this meeting tonight would be the right opportunity to do so. One question was an inquiry as to what conditions, if any, the board would consider. Tonight's hearing will focus on the proposed site plan. What we learn and discuss will probably play a key role in conditions this board may consider in our deliberations. Community input is critical in shaping conditions. Public hearings required under 40B are not merely formalities. They are often the primary source of localized knowledge. And let me repeat this important fact. Community input is a primary source of local knowledge. Neighborhood residents can identify issues which site and local area, traffic bottlenecks, or safety concerns that may not be evident in submitted plans. Insights regarding the safety concerns and impacts, such as previous discussion connecting Bassett's Lane to Oak Street, are one example of community involvement. Abutters and area residents often provide insight into how a site and area function seasonally or under stress, such as during peak tourism. Broader community values, such as neighborhood character or environmental priorities, can be expressed through this process. When effectively incorporated, community feedback strengthens the legal defensibility of conditions by grounding them in credible, site-specific concerns rather than generalized opposition. In summary, during this process, your Board of Appeals and the applicant need and welcome community involvement. My goal is for this board, the community and consultants, and the applicant to view conditions as a cooperative partnership. In this process, we may not initially all agree, but I'm confident we will get there. While conditions are sometimes perceived as constraints, the more productive framing is as a collaborative negotiation between the applicant, the ZBA, and the community. From my perspective, this is what was accomplished during the hearings on Pine Oaks Village 4, and my hope is that we achieve the same together in these hearings. Consider the following as we discuss changes and conditions. Site plan improvement is the goal. For example, during the recent POV hearings, the applicant revised several aspects of the plans in response to board, peer consultant, town departments, and public feedback. In the written decision, the inclusion of conditions formalized those agreed upon improvements. It also is predictability for Penrose. Clear, well-crafted conditions provide certainty. The applicant will know what is required to proceed, reducing ambiguity and potential disputes later. It's mutual problem solving. Many conditions emerge from dialogue. Traffic engineers, fire and police departments, planners, and peer consultants working with the applicant to find feasible solutions rather than the board imposing rigid mandates. Value creation. Improvements driven by conditions, better site design, enhanced landscaping, safer access, improved parking, can increase the overall value and acceptance of the development. Seen this way, the conditions are not punitive. They are a documented outcome of a negotiated process that aligns development feasibility with community standards. I view tonight's hearing as a kickoff event. The peer consultant, the board members will outline opportunities to improve the site plan, not only to address local and state codes, but of importance, the quality of life in this proposed community. The applicant will outline their response on the feasibility of changes. During the public comment period, I hope to hear from residents expressing their opinions and recommendations as well. Area neighbors and community stakeholders are the primary source of local knowledge, and your feedback strengthens this process. As all parties work together with respective dialogue, informed and expert testimony, these hearings will result in mutually agreeable changes to be outlined conditions to ensure a wonderful new Harwich neighborhood is built. At this time, I'd like to ask the board members to identify themselves.
Chris Murphy.
John August.
Brian Sullivan
Kenneth Dixon.
David Wilson.
Christine Flynn.
and
Paul Haverty, I'm a consultant provided by Mass Housing Partnership under their technical review program.
excellent. Thank you, Paul. Welcome aboard tonight. Okay. Our town attorney may not be able to make it tonight, but she may be dialing in online at some point. So I guess now that we've gotten through my opening remarks, we can kick things off with the site civil peer review by VHB.
You want me to read the case?
Oh, excuse me. Thank you very much. I'm glad you stepped in. Protocol. Please read the case, clerk.
Sure. Case number 2026-01, Penrose LLC agent and applicant, Harwich Affordable Housing Trust owner, 50 Milk Street, 16th floor, Boston, Mass. 02110, has made an application for a comprehensive permit pursuant to MGL Chapter 40B, Sections 20 through 23, and 760 CMR 56.00 to construct 14 townhome-style residential structures of 3 to 8 units each, 60 units in total of family rental housing. This case has been continued from February 26, 2026.
Thank you.
Sounded loud.
Okay.
Where would you like me to stand?
Oh, on the, at the desk is fine. I'm sure there's a mic there, isn't there?
There is, and we had sent in a little PowerPoint to sort of go over part of it, so I don't know if that's available at all or not.
I hope it is.
Yes, if you
Okay.
have a,
Going on behind you there, somebody's on it.
There we go. Okay.
All right, here's what we're going to do here for a second, folks. Can everybody in the audience see that? Okay. All right. You want us to move, I'll tell you what, why don't we move, you want me to move the screen over? Well, there's plenty of room over here for you folks from Penrose and so forth, so why don't you all head over there? Thank you. And sir, if you could identify yourself?
Be happy to. My name is Frank DiPietro. I'm a registered professional civil engineer with VHB. I've had the pleasure of being here before, so I'm happy to be back for the Zoning Board of Appeals. Some of this is VHB sort of promoting itself, but basically I just want to go through and this will be the scope of what we looked at, and then we'll go into more details of the specifics. So again, we're hired as a peer review consultant by the Harwich Zoning Board of Appeals. You can go to the next slide, please. And the overview, we're looking at this development, which is a 60-unit multifamily residential. I'll go fast because people are familiar with this. Under Chapter 40B, it's at 456 Queen Anne Road. And our major focus was to evaluate the site civil stuff under applicable local regs, the state stormwater standards, some federal standards, as well as standard engineering practice. And essentially, the end of our report will be contributing to the zoning board to make a decision on this project. Next slide, please. And again, we broke up to the major tasks. We were looking at the subdivision of land and site plan approval, so special permit. So we coordinated our review with that of the applicable municipal departments, fire, DPW, police, conservation, planning, to sort of look at the physical design of the project site. We looked at things like the turning movements inside. Do the trucks, do the vehicles going into the site, are they going to be able to make the turns appropriately? We wanted to confirm whether the street is demonstrating is a dead end under the local regulations, and if it is it compliant with the design standards? We also looked at the utilities, the stormwater, pipe sizing, the sanitary sewer, the septic system. We looked at the drainage. We looked at how they meet with not only the local standards, but also state and federal standards. And then we just listed at the bottom there some of the standards we looked at. On the left-hand side is a picture of the site plan. So again, you can sort of see the bottom of that is Queen Anne roadway. There's a rectangular, if you will, roadway coming up from Queen Anne, and the 15 buildings that comprise this development are shown on that plan. Next slide, please. We also, again, noted before, we looked at stormwater management. We essentially wanted to make sure that when you redevelop a site, there's an increase in runoff, disturbance of the landform. Is that runoff going to be maintained so it's not increasing, it's not flooding? Does it meet the various and sundry state, federal, and local standards for attenuation of peak flow rates, recharge into the ground, addressing any kind of contamination you may have from stormwater runoff, and is it being handled appropriately? So again, we listed there the major items we looked at. Runoff flow paths, drainage areas, did they use the right methodology? We looked at the basins, the areas on the site where they're going to collect the stormwater and recharge it, allow it to attenuate any flow off the site. We looked at, are there going to be low impact development, LID standards, planning strategies that were involved in that. We looked at where you recharge water into the ground. There are state standards regarding looking at what the soils are. Will the soils be able to handle that infiltration? Are there other issues? So one comment we had for our original test results was that you needed to add at least one more test pit evaluation in each area to meet the state standards. And then we basically wanted to make sure that the technical basis for establishing the seasonal high groundwater at various locations in the site met the requirements of the state and others. There were really two parts of that. One is on-site subsurface sewage disposal, so we want to make sure that sewage disposal areas are going into the ground, not going into a groundwater level or flooding out. And the second part of that would be the stormwater basins, the same type of thing. Are they going to function the way they're supposed to be designed and operate? The site has an interesting setup. Typically, when you look at test pits, there's a little stain, a reddish stain, and that generally indicates where the high water table is. It tends to fluctuate. In this site, they had that, but they also had a lower level of water table they were utilizing. We've asked them to go back and do some additional testing to clarify that. Generally speaking, to be conservative, you use the redox, that red area, as the conservative. So again, we just want to work on that. Stop me if there's any comments or questions from the board. Otherwise, I'll keep on running my mouth off. Next slide, please. Another part of this was to looking at how are people going to get onto the site, both by vehicles and pedestrians, and how they're going to get around the site. So we looked at things like, are they meeting at, say, a crosswalk standards for handicap accessibility on the site, across the site. We were also looking at parking as part of the accessibility. They're requesting a waiver from the standard parking ratios. Does that make sense? We were looking at access under the Fair Housing Act. They require, if you're tying into a public roadway, do you have access from the public to get from your site to that public way? Reading the regulation, we think there's a question there. I'm not an attorney, as a number of lawyers have told me, and so we're deferring this final determination to the legal counsel for the town. But the question would be, does there need to be a sidewalk from Queen Anne Road up into the site for pedestrians? When we were looking at this, we wanted to understand, are the access for vehicles, including school buses, trash trucks, moving trucks, delivery trucks, do they meet the site layout of parking and roadways? Do they meet that standard so those trucks can turn around appropriately and get around there? And then a nitpicking point, one site has a catch basin in the crosswalk. Generally speaking, you want to keep people's feet dry when they're going through the crosswalk. So we did get some comments. We did get some revised plans on Friday. I've only had a preliminary chance to look at these, but I'll be happy to say they moved the catch basin out of the crosswalk. So next slide, please. And then another part of this was, how does the proposed development meet general engineering standards and the site plan requirements of the town? So again, we looked at standards from the town that talk about, tell us about the site lighting. You've got to have a minimum foot candle everywhere in the site. Do they meet that? Identify where snow storage is. I've been down the Cape, living here for 4 years. My sister-in-law says since we moved here, we've brought the snow down from north of Boston. Having survived the 24 inches in Falmouth where I live, it's a new thing here, but it's something that's really important. What do you do with snow storage? That's a big thing. Do you block areas? Do you move it off the site? Do you have a truck that melts it, whatever? There are state and federal standards for EV-ready charging stations. Do they meet those requirements under the Stretch Energy Code? The roadway grading is shown on the plan, but typically you have a profile. The profile is used to show the center line of the roadway, and then generally you can identify the standard you're using to make sure that as you're going over a hill, you can see on both sides of it, for example. Those type of things. We requested that they maybe look at those. We also looked at, the site is going to have a lot of earthwork. They're putting in the ground 2 different underground subsurface sewage disposal. They're putting in underground or surface ground infiltration systems. They're putting in foundations, utilities. There's going to be a lot of earth being taken outside. How does that work? Where is that going to be going? Is it going to be reused on site? Are they going to take it off? If they'll be taken off, does that impact traffic, for example? Again, we're looking at steeper slopes. The site goes up, as you well know, from the area. It's relatively steep from Queen Anne roadway up to the site. The proposed driveway coming up from Queen Anne Road is about a 10% grade. That's relatively steep. How is that going to work? There was a question about whether or not, when you're constructing the site, they'll have the appropriate erosion and sedimentation controls so that they maintain there's no runoff of sediment or muddy water. And then there is a discussion about a potential sanitary sewer being installed in Queen Anne Road. The site is proposed on-site subsurface sewage disposal. How then do we plan ahead? It's not there now, it may not be there, but how do we plan for that new connection at some point to be changed from the on-site sanitary infiltration system to tying into the future septic stormwater system in the roadway, Queen Anne's roadway. Next.
Frank, if I might,
Yeah.
before you proceed to the next frame, I'm just looking at the very first one that said that the current lighting plan doesn't meet.
Right.
I didn't read any comments or anything else, and I've seen several documents, some of which are later right. Are you going to be addressing that specific or any of these specific ones as you make your presentation?
Some of them, so I'll step back a second. So we got a response. We sent our peer review letter, about 20 pages out, it was February 13th. The applicant submitted a response to all those. He cut it down, fortunately, to about 11 pages responses that they did. I looked at it on Friday. We haven't done a detailed review of a lot of it. I have some preliminary comments, and I'll just preface that by saying we want to go back in and make sure that I haven't missed something. So, for example, one of my preliminary comments was I didn't see the turning radius plans for buses on the site or some of the delivery vehicles.
I don't want to get you out of order.
No,
I
that's
just had the
okay,
very specific, but you are going to address some of these
Yes,
specifics.
I
Okay.
am, and
Fine.
so, not all of them in detail,
All right.
but I do want to sort of go
Thank you.
through, and, the more detailed with them. I found that I had missed two of the pages. One had the school bus turning radius, the other had the other. I haven't looked at those in detail, but again, there's stuff there. I think the drainage report's 400 pages long. There's 20 or 30 pages of other material. The site plans are about 15 pages, so I'm a quick reader, but I'm not that quick to get all that stuff taken care of.
Thank you.
Sure. Next slide. And then, as part of the project, the applicant has requested a number of waivers. Among them is a reduction in the on-site parking. Under the town zoning requirements, 102 spaces are required. They've requested a waiver for 76 spaces. To the applicant's team, check me on this. I counted about 10 times, and on the site plan, I found 75 parking spaces. Yes, so there's space to add another one, but I wanted to make sure, so again, it's a minor point of thing, but what's presented on the plan is going to be what's built, so we want to make sure all those things are consistent. One item that we brought up about that is there are 60 units or residential that's being proposed. The 76 is, I think it's a 1.25 parking space per unit, is my recollection. That's a little light. On the other hand, depending upon, that may be appropriate, and that's not for me to decide, that's for the board to decide with input from folks. But one of the things that we've run into in other projects is sometimes people have visitor parking. So how is that going to be handled? There's not space on the site to address that. Again, they requested reduced parking dimensions from what the town of Harwich requires, particularly with regard to the handicap accessible spaces and stuff like that. Again, our quick review of that, those are reasonable. The 18 by, I think it was 21 feet, if I'm not mistaken, typical, that's not overly burdensome. We did have some questions about some of the locations of the parking, and I'll get into that a little bit later, for the accessible parking spaces and for the visitor and the amenity space. The applicant requested some reductions in the setbacks along the property boundaries for landscaping, things like that. We looked at that, and again, there may be reasons besides engineering, but there's not, from our point of view, we didn't see a technical reason why a waiver couldn't be granted. We have no authority to grant waivers. That's just a technical opinion on that. Next slide, please. More waivers. One of the big issues here is that the subsurface sewage disposal system are relatively large. They're typically larger than you normally would get under the standard Massachusetts Title V, typically 2,000 gallons per day per development. So we essentially looked at what was being proposed, and really what we looked at was, is it impacting other systems? And the answer is not. However, the major item, because of the size of the system, it's going to have review by outside the town of Harwich. It would essentially have to be not only the Cape Cod Commission, but also the Mass DEP. So really, they're going to have the final say on how the system is actually designed. The one item that will come up in a little bit goes back to the proposed future expansion of the municipal system in Queen Anne Roadway. And you'll see on one of the other plans when we get to that, there may want to be some consideration on how that connection takes place in the future. At some point, the subsurface system will be abandoned, but you've got to connect with a series of pipes. Where do you put them? You've got the one driveway going up the hill. If you put a sewer line in that driveway, you're preventing access. You've got a septic system in the middle of one of the areas. How are you going to get that around the buildings and stuff like that? Not suggesting that it fully be designed or installed, but some consideration of what that means. And the second part, when the town gets to put that sanitary sewer in Queen Anne Roadway, it'll be nice to know where they might want to have a connection point for a sewer manhole in advance. On to the next slide, please. Good. My favorite one. Thank you for that part of it. That said, we could move on to some more items, but that was basically our overall presentation. I do have more detailed comments, but
Yeah, Frank, one quick question. Regarding the sewer system, the septic system, what is the jurisdiction responsibilities between Cape Cod Commission and the Mass DEP?
so if the system is of sufficient size, both of those folks have the ability, have the required to take a look at it. I believe the state is 10,000 gallons per day for sewer.
Yeah.
And so, and under the Cape Cod Commission regulation, they also want to look at a size of a sewer in that magnitude.
Who has the final call? I thought it was a state.
Yes, I mean, it is, the Mass DEP is the final determiner of that. The local Board of Health and other folks have some jurisdiction and have some input to that,
Okay.
but they're not the final say.
So the Cape Cod Commission would present their findings to the state in that
Correct.
case? Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Actually, a question on, I love getting new words in my vocabulary, the redoxamorphic features
Okay.
that you mentioned. Could the prior use of the site and a lot of the spoil piles that are there have impacted the readings, or is it pretty, definitive?
So, I'm not a soil evaluator.
Right.
Someone who's certified by the state to go out and look at the groundwater and whatever. Talking to experts who have looked at those, generally speaking, there's rust in the water. And the redox is a rust stain, if you will, on the soil. And really what that is, when springtime water level's higher, the water stands there. As the water recedes over the rest of the year, that layer sort of rusts out, turns a little bit red. There's not a definitive answer as to how long one of those might last, but typically they fade away over time. So if there's a change in groundwater level, so in the last 50 years, the groundwater sank 2 feet. Generally speaking, in most cases, that old redox level at 2 feet higher would have faded away. So it is generally presumed that a redox layer is a current conservative estimate as to what the groundwater level, maximum groundwater level is. the design standards for not only a septic system recharge, but also for stormwater recharge is predicated on a separation. You don't want to have your system flooded out, it won't work. But also you want to have a little bit of space between them so that anything can flow into the ground and be dissipated.
But if, I mean, on a site like this is not an undisturbed site, right? It was, had uses before, there's
That's
obviously
correct.
spoils, some spoil piles there and everything. That's sort of my question is, could that have an impact on the readings in the test pits?
It could have, but not all, it was uniform. I mean, my understanding, and I've looked at the reports, is that when the field testing was done, a representative of the Board of Health was at the site watching these two things. There was a determination made that we think the groundwater isn't at the redox, but at the actual observed level. From what my understanding is, the Board of Health representative agreed with that. That said, because the regulations talk about redox as something to be used under the state requirements, we brought it up. There was some additional testing done. There's a certain number of test pits, minimum that need to be done in an area. They're doing some more, they've done some more. I can get into that in a minute. And so we requested that they look at that more carefully, that redox layer and the groundwater elevation that was encountered when they did the testing.
Thank you.
Other questions or confusions?
Well, there's always confusion, but keep going.
All righty, so what I'm sort of going to do now is the applicant's engineer Bowler provided a letter that responded to a number of our comments. Now, the good news is most of our, I wrote some very quick preliminary comments on the margin of their letter, but most of these comments are basically of the kind that says, we need to take more time. I can't get 2 days and get a really good review. I need another week or two to do that review. So I'm going to go through the comments that I might have some bearing to not only to the zoning board, but also to the folks here as well. And that means about a third of the comments, not the whole letter, will be gone through. And I'm going to go through these very quickly because these are preliminary. And like I noted earlier, my quick run through Monday, Tuesday, I missed 2 sheets that were important. When we go through it more detailed, we'll be able to address these things in a little bit more clarity than what I have right now. But I want to give people at least a heads up as to where we're coming from. So
And is this the April 16th letter response that you're reviewing?
That's the April 16th letter, yep. So it's more or less tied to the general comments we had. So subdivision, land and specifications, really the only comments we had is that we need to sort of look at a little more carefully. The one item that, again, I'll sort of go back to throwing this at a legal interpretation is we noted the potential pedestrian access up from Queen Anne Road into the site. And the response that was given is that this is a private development. We don't believe that the requirements of the public access are applicable to this site. We're just reading the regulation, and what the Americans with Disabilities Act basically says is if a private development is tying into a public way, there needs to be a public access from that site to the public way. That's just us recounting the existing regulation. We really would recommend that a legal counsel would, and maybe you may be able to address that, just to have any, but would want to look at that more carefully to see, is that applicable under the 40B? Is it something like that? So that's comment there. The truck turning templates have been addressed. Most of the other comments under that first section really are, we need to do more review and get back to you. The second portion talked about stormwater management. And again, some of these are related to other permitting down the road. As part of this project for the construction, there needs to be a filing under the sort of National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, NIPDES, that provides a very detailed program and follow-up and basically specifications for during construction, how you're going to maintain sedimentation and erosion control. There's a relatively impressive form. There's a report that will be this thick that you'll get through by the time of that. There'll be ongoing inspections required of the applicant, reporting not only to the federal, but typically to the local jurisdiction. And so that is pretty well standardized. Again, the recommendation we would have is that you don't need this now, you need it when you've got your construction plans put together. So this should be a condition of approval, presuming that the zoning board issues one, that has to be done prior to getting your building permit. There are, on the federal level, if you don't do this, there are potentially very stiff and severe penalties to your project. Not recently, but the federal government has been doing test cases where they find somebody and they might fine them $100,000 or $200,000. The real purpose is to make sure you don't get sedimentation erosion off your site onto some other property or onto a public way. Some general stormwater comments that were in here. I mentioned earlier the subsurface investigations, and going back and forth, we've already almost beat the redox thing to death. However, there are state requirements that require a certain number of test pits in each of a recharge area for stormwater. We requested that they didn't have, they needed some more. They did some. They provided us with some preliminary responses. And one of the responses, I think there's a typo. I don't know that, but generally speaking, one of the things you look at is how fast does the water seep into the ground? And that's typically indicated in how many inches per minute of water would go into the ground over the course of an hour. So you fill the hole, you put water in it, you measure, monitor it. That's witnessed by the Board of Health. In the information we got last week, that's Friday, one of the reports said that they had a infiltration rate of 90 inches per hour. And the material they described, there's different types of soil classification, was a silty sand. Generally speaking, a silty sand, and they've got standards that are put out by soil scientists, has an infiltration rate of about 9.75 inches per hour. An infiltration rate of 90 inches per hour would be a pile of crushed stone. Maybe a nice sandy material, really coarse sand, might have an infiltration rate of 30 minutes per inch. So we're gonna, in our formal report, we're gonna request that they take a look at that, and if necessary, maybe they redo some of those tests just to get an appropriate level on those.
So I understand that. What is the impact of what you're talking about?
Okay, so the impact really is we want to make sure that the infiltration systems, and it's used not only for the stormwater, but also for the septic system, that the right infiltration rate is being used, because the infiltration rate sizes what you're doing for your area that provides that recharge volume.
So you're saying too fast is not necessarily a benefit?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And again, if it were closer, I think it's a mistake, to be honest, because you can't get that high.
I think what you're saying is if it's too fast, you'll design the system too small, and if you find out it's not that fast, you're not gonna have.
There's also the fact that if it goes down too fast, you may have to have a more distance to your groundwater level.
Right, yeah.
Because the water's getting there too fast and it's not being absorbed in any of the area below that. So, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave that topic, can we ask the applicants to respond? Is it 90 a typo?
Oh, let's ask that question. Is 90 a typo?
Yes.
Oh, it is?
Okay, good.
And what should it be?
I don't have that exact log in front of me, but I can find that information.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
We do not use 90 in our design.
Okay, good.
Film at 11.
Looking at standard rates that are provided in various tables and stuff like that, a silty sand often has a rate of about 8.75 inches per hour. So the 9 seems somewhat reasonable. Depending on the soil, it might be different than that, and you really have to rely upon the test you do for the final design.
Frank, along that lines, based on the size, what you've seen in the plans of the recharge areas for both the septic and the stormwater, do you believe that they are undersized?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Again, there's a required minimum number of test pits in a couple of areas, they weren't there, so
I
you
heard
want to
that.
make sure the soil is uniform over the entire bottom of your system.
Yep.
And that's sort of really where we want to make sure that, you know, it's not a good soil here, a not good soil over here, and therefore you've got to take the average of that for your infiltration system.
Okay.
Most of the other material in the stormwater part of it is, we got to take a look at the details of the calculations and be able to make sure that they've addressed issues and they're standardized. Moving on to the general engineering, and again, please stop me. I
No,
don't
you're
want
doing
this-
fine. You will.
I want to make sure that I don't take too long here. General engineering comments, that there was a question about, has the layout of the roadways been reviewed and finalized for access by the fire department, the Harwich Fire Department? Between our report going out and this one came in, they've reviewed it with the fire department. The fire department has issued a letter that says they have no problem. They have provided in the latest version the turning radius for the fire trucks. They seem to get through okay. So that part of it's been taken care of. Were a number, so particularly at crosswalks, you need to have spot grades to make sure that that crosswalk is handicap accessible. The plans we looked at in our February 13th letter were missing some of the spot grades. They've added the spot grades. We've looked at a couple of them, but we want to go back in more detail and make sure that they're acceptable, they meet the handicap requirements. The end of the day, this could be a condition of approval. Final grading, that level of, you know, individual spot grades, is something that's typically tied to a construction set of plans. We want to make sure that the handicap accessible areas meet the standards for the code, but there'll be a lot more spot grades in the final details. But that's something that the board could consider for future reference.
Can we back up 1 second, Frank?
Sure.
On the turning radius for the fire trucks and so forth, did you look at the maps that they provided that showed, you know, the limits of the turns and where they encroached upon the various parking spaces and the turns on the roadway?
We did, they seemed to be okay. Where they were close, what we ended up doing was deferring to the fire department.
So with that, did you note the fact that the limits of those turn radiuses pretty much abutted the ends of the 18-foot parking spaces, as well as sort of the radius limits on the roadway itself?
We looked at some of those areas, yes. Haven't gone back in great detail to go over those to
So
respond.
if vehicles extended beyond the 18-foot limit of the parking space, wouldn't that therefore create a problem for the turning radius?
It depends on how far over. So, again, what we would need to do, we'll do this, is blow up the plan and measure. So, generally speaking, you've got the outside limits of the vehicle, then you've got the inside wheel turning radiuses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what we would take a look at. If there's a question, we'll note it. My understanding is the fire department has the final say, but we certainly could note that, and, you know, maybe we'll go back and
Right.
talk to the fire department.
I'm not speaking just to the fire department. The school bus pretty
Well-
much had the same limits.
Yes, so
And hit the same points on the roadway.
that's a little bit of a different story. I haven't looked at the school bus turning rate, but that was a concern I had, because there are certain corners that the school bus goes over.
Yes.
Again, you really don't want to ride over a curb. One, it does damage to the vehicle wheels, but also, it's not really applicable and appropriate for people riding the bus or whatever else and things like that. It may be applicable if the fire truck's trying to stop a fire, they'll go wherever they have to go, but not to the school bus. Haven't had a chance to look at that. That was one of the things I missed in the last 2 days. I saw it this afternoon, to be honest. I haven't gone through the whole thing on that.
Thank you.
Snow storage areas, they're showing them on the plan. The question, and they do have a comment, and again, our comment was written prior to looking at these new plans. They do have a comment in their responses that says, we've sized them for a certain area. We will have a program, in fact, that will remove excess snow, like the 24 inches we got a few weeks back. I think that's something that the zoning board may want to carefully consider. You know, climate change is real, and so, yes, if you're used to getting 6 or 8 inches of snow that melts in a week, that's not a big deal. Where it hangs around for 3 or 4 weeks after the fact, and you get a couple of storms on top of that, that's a different thing that may need to be looked at. And it may be just part of a program that the applicant would provide to you, saying, okay, when we reach, you know, the snow pile we're presuming is 2 feet high. And that presumes 6 inches of snow over the area of wherever we're plowing to. Those are the kind of calculations we would typically see. And that if in fact it gets more than that, then we're gonna take it off the site, we'll bring on a big truck and melt it down and put it in the drain. I mean, but they come up with a program how to handle something more than that. And it is a new concern that we're seeing more and more often now. So, with regards to the parking layout, couple of things. On the site plan, we've got essentially, you're coming up on the road A, there's the rectangle that basically has a development program, and the parking is essentially on the outside of that, if you will, if you sort of get the big picture of that. And there are 15 buildings, 14 residential along the perimeter, and 1 community building in the center island, if you will, there. So, looking at the current layout, it shows where the accessible spaces are going to be located, where the electrical vehicle charging stations are going to be located, and those spaces in relation to the parking layout. These will be in the more detail, but just 3 items that I noted. One is, as you're coming up the hill, the first building on your right is building 14. Where it's situated, it is the closest parking space is 50 feet from the front door. The building extends another 100 or so feet down. So, question in my mind, I know there's grade changes and stuff, but essentially the people parking or who will park at that building will have a way to walk. In a similar vein, the proposed handicap accessible spaces are in 2 locations. One, if you sort of look at the if you look at the site plan, north is to the top, and so on the parking that's on the north side of the little rectangle in the middle, there are 2 adjacent accessible spaces. On the opposite, the south side, there are 2 adjacent accessible spaces. They're located, and again, I'm picking on poor building 14 because that's the farthest away from folks. The distance to those spaces is about 300 feet, depending on how you want to walk. So again, that seems to be a little bit excessive. And then lastly, with regard to the electric vehicle charging stations, they're located, again, if you go to the northerly side of the site, more or less in the upper left area of the parking lot. There are 6 spaces side by side, and that's about 400 feet away from, again, poor building 14. The point I'm making is that you're limiting where you can get your electric vehicle charging. You may not be in a location that if someone's along the easterly side of the site, they may have a little bit of a trek to get to those accessible spaces. Now, it may very well be that they're showing a schematic of where they're putting stuff on, they're showing the number they're going to provide. But again, it's something that I think we're going to ask the applicant to take a look at and respond to in a way that maybe spreads those out. It's efficient to put them that way. It's more costly to put different charging stations, for example. But again, we want to suggest that they would be more evenly dispersed across the site. Okay. The second accessible item goes back to something I mentioned previously, and that is, so the school bus is going to be on the site. It's not going to be an issue for kids walking down to get the bus on Queen Anne's Road, but, and I drove by there tonight, I know there's not a lot of places to walk to, but there's no access for pedestrians from the residential portion of it down to Queen Anne roadway. Now, that roadway has got a 10% slope. That's very difficult. The accessibility is minimum of 4 to 5%. it would be difficult to get a sidewalk that will go down there. But the question would be, it's private development. Our read, as a non-legal person, is that you were required to provide access from a site, accessible access from a site to a public way. We've made the comment, we'll defer to others to interpret that. And there may be other ways to try to look at that. Maybe it's a cross-country access point or something like that that doesn't follow the roadway, but something on that.
So Frank, is there any benefit to having a sidewalk if it does not meet the ADA requirements?
So if you're putting in a sidewalk because you want to provide access, my understanding of the regulations, you have to provide an accessible accommodation. You could have an access and you could have stairways or whatever next to it for the accessible folks, but if you've got a sidewalk, you need to have, provide accessible accommodations to that sidewalk.
Thank you.
To the turning radius, okay. Address that one. I think it's already taken, one of our comments related to access of school buses onto private property. That obviously, because of what they're showing, has been addressed with the school department, so that one is no longer. And the bus turning radii, again, we'll look at them in more detail, where there's some overhangs, but,
I'm not quite sure if that's been fully addressed with the school department, but I'll
Oh,
have Penrose
okay.
discuss it at some
Okay.
point.
okay. So one question that we have is, and I mentioned it earlier, the future sanitary sewer connections, if and when a sanitary sewer is provided by the town in Queen Anne roadway. So, again, if you sort of look at the site, you've got that rectangle where most of the development is. The internal is the community building and one of the septic subsurface sewage disposal. There's another one just on the downside of the, the easterly side of the project. And the question in my mind is, when that accommodation comes and they're required, how are they going to do that? They have essentially two general routes. They could go through the existing street system, but those are roadways that are 22 feet wide with parking on, at least in the middle of the, on both sides, 22 foot going down the hill. There's only one way in. How are they going to provide that access? Do they need to think ahead and put in sewer there? The second access is going cross-country, between the buildings that are there, and the buildings are relatively close together, down the hill, avoiding the recharge, the stormwater recharge basin out into the street in that way. It's just something that I think the board may want to consider asking to think about in advance. Like I said, if you know where you're gonna have a connection in the future, when you're designing your new sewer, you can accommodate that.
Is your understanding on the timing something like 2048?
Again, I have no idea. I mean, it could be a very long period. So if that's the case, maybe there'll be something other, and probably we'll have another technology besides the current system that we're doing. I don't have that background. I'm just suggesting that's something. If it's in the near future, 5 or 10 years, that might be applicable. If it's 25 years off, maybe not. And probably by that time, you'd be looking at a different type of subsurface sewage disposal system based on the technology coming along.
Thank you.
So, again, just note it as a potential issue. Let me just go back to my other comments that I have, looking at the stuff that was just provided. And this is tied, I think, to your agenda. To address some of those. Okay, anything? I think what I've run over very quickly covers, in general, my comments for the time being. Be happy to answer questions from the board or from other folks, or be happy to turn over to the folks, the developers.
Frank, Ken Dixon again, full circle. You did not address the question I had earlier about lighting.
Oh, okay. So, again, we have not looked at it in great detail, other than the fact that the lighting that was provided in the initial submittal did not meet the standards everywhere across the site. They didn't include in our guests lighting from the buildings and stuff like that. We have not had a chance to look at the lighting plan that's provided yet. So our comment stands until we have a chance to take a look at that. In our next review, we'll address that comment. But there were areas that were too dark, that did not meet the town requirements for lighting
Okay,
across the site.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, from anybody at the moment, or would you like to then proceed next with the response from Penrose and Affordable Trust? Proceed.
I'm ready.
Proceed.
Frank, stay with us.
I'm gonna be here.
We're gonna need you. All right,
Okay.
so-
Oh, the seat is warm.
Defer to you. Hi, good evening, everybody. For the record, Ryan Kirchhoff with Penrose. I'm gonna hand over right away to Angela Botto from Bowler to address the comments.
Thank you. Good evening, Angela Botto with Bowler. We are the civil engineer on the project, and also with me remotely tonight is Brian Grogan. He is our wastewater engineer.
So we need to unmute him.
I think we can, yeah, he shouldn't need to speak yet, but.
Well, let's, love to hear from him if he has something, you know,
thank
pertinent
you.
to say. So we need to unmute Brian Grogan, please.
I sent an unmute request to him.
Okay,
Go ahead.
all right, go ahead, thank you.
Do we have the presentation from Penrose that we can pull up?
If you could just advance to slide 3.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome, okay, thank you, and thank you to VHB for their presentation of their comments. So since we were last in front of the board, we have reviewed VHB's peer review letter, we have responded to it, and then provided some supplemental materials that Frank was referring to. So with those supplemental materials, we have our supplemental drainage memo, we have some truck turn exhibits, we have our correspondence with the fire department, and then we also have a revised set of site development plans. So I'm just going to run through a few of these exhibits and some of those materials we submitted to provide some clarification for our responses to that peer review. So starting off here, going through that first section of the peer review that was in reference to subdivision of land and site plan special permit regulations. The project attorney is going to speak a little bit further on the subdivision of land and whether we comply, but it is our stance that we do not have to adhere to those regulations because this is not a roadway, but a drive aisle. So we have revised the plans to clarify that. However, we have responded to those comments with these truck turn exhibits to show that we do provide emergency service width and radius there, and then we have also provided the 25-year storm pipe calculations that were referenced in that section as well. So this exhibit we're looking at right here is that fire truck turning exhibit. Shows us coming into the site, taking those turns, and then making our way out of the site as well. It will note that the truck turning software is conservative, so we feel good that the fire department has also acknowledged that they are okay with this layout here.
Can I repeat my question?
Go ahead.
Again, on this particular document as well as the school bus one, do you acknowledge that the turning radius abuts the end of the parking spaces and then comes to the, basically to the curvature in the road, particularly in that northeast corner?
Front of Building 12, you mean, for the most part?
Yes.
No, 10 or 11.
No, 12, he's, right, that's the point I'm looking at.
Yep.
While they are close, there was no actual conflicts when we were
No,
running that
no,
software.
it's
Yeah.
just very close to your 18-foot long parking space. If something stuck over 18 foot would be a problem, is my point. Thank you.
And yep, that is the school bus turning exhibit right there. And Penrose is in discussions right now about where that school bus pickup stop would be. Flipping along to our next section here, and that was the stormwater management section of the peer review. As VHB referred to, we will be submitting, and we do intend to comply with the NOI and SWIP. The plans just aren't far enough along yet, but that is an acceptable condition prior to construction. And also the comment there to provide additional test pits, and I did just want to confirm that we did not use any design of 90 inches per hour. I do believe that was the 9 inches per hour there. And I did just want to clarify that we haven't done those additional tests yet, but we will prior to construction.
Can I ask a question, because it seemed to skip over? You also had a garbage truck exhibit
Yep.
in the paper portion of it. Am I looking at it correctly, that it's in the northeast corner, the truck's gonna back up and do a 3-point turn? Or is there some discontinuity in the drawing?
I think we're missing a section there of the drawing, yeah.
Speak up
There's
just a little bit.
Sorry, there's no 3-point turn in that. We can
Yeah,
provide
right in
a
front of Building
revised
10, there's like
drawing that shows
a
it a bit
mismatch.
better. Yeah.
I'm sure the residents would love the beeping.
Backing up. Great. And then back to our soil testing here. I did just want to note, so we had our registered soil evaluator that was out on site, and that they had the Board of Health out there to witness, and they noted that the soils in the area are often excessively drained and that redox features are not always indicative of seasonal high groundwater. So that was an agreement between the soil evaluator and the Board of Health, but we will also evaluate that with the additional test pits that are performed. The next section here that was commented on was providing an additional subcatchment area to show any of the water that was going on to the abutters on Plan Right that you're seeing. It is highlighted in blue if you can see that. So we did revise that in our watershed map and our plans, and we did provide a infiltration trench there in order to treat any of that runoff. And in evaluating our 3 design points here, we are still reducing all peak rates and volumes in all of the storm designs.
Okay. What site plan are we referring to? I'm on
It is I believe,
C401, I
401.
think. Yeah.
C401.
This right here is an exhibit
Okay,
in
all right,
the
thank you. I was
drainage.
trying to,
There were some additional revisions that we made with our drainage. There's some highlights here that I've provided. But one of the comments was regarding freeboard and also the low impact development comment. In order to address both of those, we did revise our above ground basins to be bioretention basins. And the landscape architect can maybe talk a bit more about some of the plantings in there. But that also has a 3-inch requirement for freeboard, and we are providing more than that. So we were able to resolve that comment there. There was a few other comments that we were providing enough cover over some of our structures. We did revise a bit of our grading here on this plan, and then we did get some additional details from the manufacturer of our water quality units, so we have provided those with this package as well.
all right, one quick question,
Yep.
and maybe John, you can answer. What is this heavier docket line down here? On the right hand, on Plan C401, on the right-hand right-hand side, what is this line for?
I think that's the limits of disturbance, right, on the drawing?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's basically where the construction disturbances end. Excavation and everything else.
Okay, and we're looking
So
at
it
that
says-
side at a 25
It's all the
foot.
way around where it says LOD.
Okay, thank you. And that, I see the gradient levels there as well, but that's also at a 25-foot setback from the lot line. What is the set, on the right-hand side, what is the setback from the lot line?
It's 25 feet.
It's okay, I thought
Yep.
so. Okay.
Well, the final building is 25 feet.
Yes,
correct?
yep.
Yeah, the disturbance will be closer.
Oh, no, I realize that, yeah, certainly it's more like 5 feet, but, okay, they're 25 feet back, okay.
There was the comment about the catch basin that was in the limits of the crosswalk. We have highlighted that in purple there, and we have relocated that out of the crosswalk to comply with those EDA. And then that last comment, that was on the low-impact development. We did revise that above-ground basin to be a bioretention basin, and then we are also believe we are complying with a low-impact development by trying to reduce the amount of disturbance on site and keep any of those existing trees that we can. So we've tried to keep some of that below ground in order to incorporate the low-impact development. This plan here is showing our snow storage, which is highlighted in orange. As VHP noted, we've seen a lot of larger storm events these past couple of years, so we would be happy to provide some additional
Okay.
volume calculations as well, and I think
Trying to
Penrose
find the
can.
storm storage.
This is just highlighted on the site plan.
I don't think we have a number.
What number are you on?
We don't have it.
It's shown on the site plan, it's just not highlighted.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
it's all right, I can use my imagination.
It's showing as a little clouds on the site plan.
They're just not colorful.
C301.
Well, Dave, first meeting, you're on top of your game, thank you.
So I'm going to move into some of the general engineering and plan comments here. This is our site plan with that snow storage shown. The first comment was in relation to the fire truck access, which I did speak to earlier in relation to the subdivision section as well. So we did provide that, and we did receive that confirmation from the fire department. The next couple of comments were in relation to where the location of our ADA spaces were. We do believe that the plan includes ADA compliant layouts for accessible spaces and routes, and we can provide some additional spots here. We've provided some, but as we further design this, we'll provide those additional spots too to ensure that we are complying with that there.
I got a question on the, on those accessible spots.
Yep.
When you build a complex like this, is a certain building assigned for accessibility for people who need that, or could it be anywhere in the complex? So do you purposely put them in a certain area because those are the buildings?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is Ryan Kirchhoff again for the record. So the ADA units, and Paul Atzeman from Union is on and can add any color necessary, but the specific ADA units, obviously they have different design standards, they're fitted out with different appliances, counter heights, everything. So we know exactly where the ADA units are on the site. And so the ADA parking spaces that have been proposed and are on the plans that have been shared are matched up with where those units are. There's actually a requirement we spoke to, I think, in the last hearing about the number of feet from an accessible unit at which you have to have an ADA space, and what's proposed is compliant with that, yes.
Ryan, I'm gonna probably get into a little bit later, more of my concerns regarding handicap parking, okay? But just one thought here, and just think about when we get into it. Obviously, there are concerns of handicap parking for people that are, you know, ADU, that may be wheelchair bound, whatever, that need an ADU unit. And then there are many people that, quite frankly, they can live in a two-story environment, but are limited in how far they can walk overall. They do fine around their house, they do fine going up and downstairs, but anything over so many feet, you know, whatever, becomes a mobility issue, becomes a, you know, particularly carrying packages and so forth, it's wear and tear on a senior citizen. So it just isn't wheelchair issues, but also folks that just need that closer situation. So carrying the groceries in when they've got scoliosis or whatever, okay, is a concern. And my concern is the fact that making sure we have an environment here and a parking situation where we're gonna have, in this more elderly population on Cape Cod, more senior citizens, but per capita, that are probably gonna be living in this development, particularly in a single bedroom units, than you might find in over the bridge. And that we have an adequate consideration for their parking needs. And that we end up with a community here that they don't feel like they have to be here with a gun to their head because that's all they can afford, and now they can't really find parking within, 200 feet of their door, and trying to carry groceries in. Okay? Actually, I don't think anybody wants to be 200 feet from their door carrying groceries in, but I just want to point that out, but I'll be discussing that later. I just wanted to land that thought, when we get to further discussion.
Understood. I'm happy to respond to it now, but you want me to hold off?
Yeah,
We can-
hold off, right.
Okay, understood.
Fine.
All right, sorry. Proceed.
We've then also highlighted in red the location of those EV spaces. And we can definitely, we understand VHB comments there on the location, and we can certainly look at separating those a bit more here as well.
Can I actually, just on your comment before with the construction of the disabled units or accessible units, so what if you build 4 of them or 5 of them? What happens if you have 6 people that want to move in?
Great, thank you for the question. So it's 3 ADA units among the 60. That's a required ratio. It's, I think, a state requirement, the percentages that have to be set aside. Then from there, and this applies both to the parking spaces and to any other improvements to make units more accessible, we have to legally, under fair housing law, make what's called reasonable accommodation for anyone that, for a health reason, puts in a request for, I'm making it up, grab bars in the shower, or a flat roll-in shower in a place where it's not provided, or lower countertops that are accessible for somebody in a wheelchair. So and this is part of the benefit of having a full-time on-site management staff in properties like this, is we are more than happy to field those requests, and we always do our very best to address those and make, they call them adaptable units, where you can adapt them to be ADA compatible.
Thank you.
We are coming to the end of my comments here, but we have Mark Warfel with Crowley Cottrell as well.
Maybe one more. Mark, you can flip through if you want.
Just these ones that we responded to.
Sure. So, Mark Warfel, I am landscape architect with Crowley Cottrell Landscape Architecture. This slide is just highlighting where those ADA parking spaces are. There are 4 located on the site. Showing again the 10-foot right-of-way easement. Let's see. Okay. Getting to planting, I think we had some questions last time about the species selection as well as irrigation. We choose our plants to work in the right place, so it's the right plant for the right place. And so these plants are well adapted to a site like this. They're all native to Cape Cod. And the establishment regime is that once planted, the contractor is responsible for maintaining them and watering them for establishment. But after that period is over, they should be well established and continue to thrive without much intervention. So we try to keep maintenance low, as well as the need for additives. But during that establishment period, there are things that we will do to help the plant adapt to the site. So a lot of times these plants come from nurseries, and there's some adaptation needed during that establishment period. Those techniques, are anything from watering to sometimes they use certain additives to help like hold water at the plants, or using water bags, as well as mowing regimes that might be more prevalent in the establishment period, just to prevent the undesirable plants from growing up. Noted, I think earlier, Angela was down in the infiltration basins. We've changed these to bioretention, so that uses a specialized seed mix that has plants that favor being wet periodically. And mixed in with that, there are shrub plantings and tree plantings. So over time, it naturalizes more and helps to filter and absorb the water. Looking at site lighting, so we saw VHB's comment about the lower light levels that were identified on site. And I'll run through a couple of these slides quick here. So this was our initial lighting plan. We're showing that there are two types of fixtures on site. We have bollard lights that are mainly associated with walkways in the central green area, and then posts with lights on top of them. They're two different heights. They're 12-foot and 16-foot tall. Those flank the road. So we're also proposing a 3,000 Kelvin color temperature, which is a nice kind of medium warm. It's not such a warm light that it looks like candlelight, but it's definitely not the blue bright light you see in supermarket parking lots. Also submitted is the photometric calculation. So this is something that we do where we plug in the fixtures, the specific fixtures, heights, outputs, and it runs through and calculates what the output of those lights are on the horizontal surface, so on the ground. The number that they use is foot candles, and what this shows is when you have fixtures that are adjacent to each other, not only what's happening right underneath them, but also how they interact. It's obviously not legible on this screen, so we do a little diagram that helps to kind of highlight to show where the light is. Frank is right in noting that there are areas that are under the guidelines that are listed in the Harwich zoning bylaws. These areas are really in the very center of the green, as well as the other outskirts of the site. The photometric plans don't take into account the building lighting, so that's a different source of light for the areas between the parking and the buildings themselves.
You say building lighting, you mean exterior building lighting? Like
For the
door light?
yeah, downlights on the porches or wall sconces, that sort of thing.
Is it it's less than half the buildings, but a number of the buildings have sidewalks that go around the back, which I'm assuming to secondary exits or storage areas.
Storage closets.
Are those lit in any way?
I think we have Paul Adaman from Union Studio Architecture on.
Yeah, we may have to unmute Paul. I'm not sure if we're able to.
Can you hear me? Hello, this is
Oh, yeah.
Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi. Yes, we haven't gotten to that level of detail. If it's a light above the shed door, it will be a down light, like with a cutoff. So it'll be basically a wall sconce with the down light.
I mean, most of those are on the perimeter of the property, which the light would shine into the neighbors. Would those be like motion censored so that they're off most of the time unless someone's there?
They could be, most likely, because we wouldn't want those on throughout the night.
Yeah, we can definitely make that work.
Yeah.
So Mark or Paul, do you confirm that you have enough lighting to meet the requirements along all the sidewalks?
Well, I wanted to speak to that
Yes.
a little bit because, yes, at the building entrances and the parking, we feel that we are meeting the requirements or the guidelines as laid out in the bylaws. But we're also using industry best practices by using fixtures that reduce glare, and we're minimizing light trespass, as well as being cognizant of energy consumption. And so that's why you see the darker area in the middle where we think it's not going to be used at night, and so we don't necessarily have a reason to light it. So we're trying to be prudent about how we're lighting the site and the quality of how we're lighting the site, more than just checking a box and making sure we hit a minimum everywhere.
Thank you. Ken, did you have any follow-up?
Okay, before you go. All right, going back to landscaping, or even from the planning and so forth, are you planning on having, water, sprinkler systems in the site?
So I can speak to that a little bit, if that's all right. So for the ongoing management of the landscaping space, we reached out to our management company. We have a handful of properties operating on the Cape and in Wareham, as you yourself know. And their response was effectively, we'll do what the local jurisdiction will allow us to do. So the irrigation comment that was made before, we typically on our Cape Cod projects have needed to do an irrigation system for the original establishment of the plants.
Right.
Usually that's a season or two, and then typically it's abandoned in place and just isn't used anymore. It won't be noticeable. From there, if the preference in Harwich is that there is not an ongoing sprinkler system, we can find other ways to bring a watering truck or things like that. Same goes for fertilizers, pesticides. The way the management company treats it is entirely dependent on what the local jurisdiction says that they want. So we can be flexible about that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on site plan review? I think we've probably covered most of it. So welcome. Any other questions related to the site plan peer review? Otherwise, happy to move on to.
The questions on access to the, off of Route 124 or other, is that now the time to address that, or will there be other?
I
Brian?
would defer to the
I
chair.
apologize.
That's okay.
So what was the question?
Yeah, my question was, is this a good time to address access off of 124 or other, Bassett Lane, whatever, now, or is that gonna be handled later?
That'd be, right now, that'd be later.
Later, also with the
Also,
septic questions?
Regarding, today I want to keep my preferences to get through all the site plan situations. I'd rather defer to what the Affordable Trust is going to do on access to 124, because that's off of their property, and have that probably at the next meeting to review that.
What's the next meeting is next?
May 7th,
May 7th, yes, okay.
okay?
Mr. Chair, if
I'd rather rip through all the.
That's fine, no, that's the reason I asked.
If we have plenty of time left over, we'll go for
No,
it.
we'll wait till next week, that's no rush on it,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose an opportunity.
Yeah.
When we had the right people here.
Well, yeah, on that note,
Subject to site, absolutely.
On that note, if I may, if you do have septic questions, since we have Brian Grogan from Bowler on the line, I think tonight would be the night to ask any of those.
At least, if nothing else, even if we don't go into great detail, there's probably certain questions that we would like answered. So, obviously squeezing, and I'll use that term, 60 units into, 60 living units into a small site is much higher density than you'd normally put any houses. So, a normal septic system like we have on all the houses here, 1 acre lots or smaller, they generate a lot of nitrogen. My understanding is your system is going to enhance nitrogen removal. And so the question, either you answer now or at a future date, how do you compare those? So if there was a septic system like I have in my house, just something 20 years old, how does it compare to what you're putting in? And how could you improve what you plan on doing here? How can you make it better? Where you're located is right in the major water recharge area for the town. So it's an important consideration for the town. It's probably quite a distance away from the Herring River, so I know why the sewers aren't gonna be in as fast. But for the town drinking water, it's probably important. That's the reason they created the 6 ponds
Right.
area in the first place.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for the question. Are we able to unmute Brian Grogan if he's there? Because I know he can address this.
There he is.
Yeah, he should be unmuted. He's unmuted.
Yep. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hey, Brian, sure can.
Sure. So we are using the enhanced nitrogen removal system. So those are different than a conventional septic system. They're capable of removing about 75 to 80% of the nitrogen that enters those systems. To speak to relative improvement, we're also using the GST leaching system, which has some additional, it's an alternative leaching field rather than just a pipe and stone field. It does have some aeration components to it with the soil air function, which that further helps remove a little bit of nitrogen on the effluent side of things. We did recently, just I think the other day, submit a letter to the Board of Health of the town of Harwich for their review relative to, direction of groundwater flow, some of the other soil testing that was done, and depth of groundwater that was encountered or shown during the soil testing that Harwich observed. So that's still, I think, being worked on by the Board of Health, and we'll obviously continue to have that dialogue with them.
A follow-up question then. I think at a previous meeting, Brian or someone stated that there will be less nitrogen effluent from this proposed complex than you would have if you had just 5 single-family homes? Is that correct?
Yeah, we had done some nitrogen mass balance calculations that showed, consistently, but based on, effluent, assumed effluent nitrogen from conventional septic systems compared to that of the advanced treatment units and what they're capable of, that it would be very close to equivalent to that.
Thank you.
Okay, so, at one point during these meetings, we're gonna be setting conditions, talking about that, trying to figure, it'd be very helpful, is it possible to summarize that in very short, 1 or 2 page?
Certainly.
This is what we're delivering. You mentioned the geometrics at GST membrane or a leaching system as enhancing that. Some numbers associated with that, just so we get a feel for it. And the comment that, we just talked about with the 5 homes as an example, things like that, so we can get an idea of relative to alternatives and best case technology, what do you have?
100%.
Just imagine not only educating us, but educating the community regarding nitrogen impact, which is important to a lot of folks, and particularly in that particular district.
Brian, do you have anything to add?
No, just one. I know one other comment that had come up earlier about the future sewer connection. We have there's 2 sanitary systems there. There are individual gravity collection systems. We do have a pump station at both systems, so we can elevate sewage back up a little bit higher. We can very easily adapt this on-site system to connect to the future sewer system. when that comes. It's our understanding that that is like beyond 10 years out at this point. So, I mean, again, but we can very easily adapt to that if and when that comes to this area.
10 years can happen pretty quickly, but my understanding is it's actually more in the 15-year range to 18-year range. But again, that happens. And so if I might ask a question now, two-part. One, you know, will you consider, so that the neighborhood, the community's not disrupted a great deal in 18 years? Because, you know, it's gonna come sooner than you think. That, you know, sufficient conduits are put in, regardless of what the future technology might be, it's probably still gonna need a hole in the ground, okay? So, and if anything, the technology would be the fact that maybe need less of an area than we need today. So my guessing would be whatever technology is needed today for a size pipe, given this, you know, scenario, that would be probably appropriate 18 years from now when the town is running sewers down that street. Given the size of this, the narrowness of these roads and the areas, that could be extremely, you know, disruptive to the neighborhood. If this is on taken, you know, 18 years from now, okay? The other part of it is, given the fact that, you know, this property is also, which you folks are, you know, leasing, okay? I'm looking for what's happening with the 5 to 8 acres above it. And that also, I'd like to see plans, not only that you folks have for the right-of-way you're gonna establish for yourself, for sewer in the future, but also the easement for the affordable trust land above regarding what they might do, and that those plans are also, because that might, you know, that easement be shown, and actually during construction, at least where the town, however the town wants to address it, that's up to the town, and you folks working together, but I'd like to see that easement plan for the affordable trust land above incorporated in your site plan so that be addressed. And particularly, any disruption there might be in that easement on parking and driveway on the Penrose property, which you've already granted the affordable trust an easement for people to travel down that road, because you've got the road going up, you know, to the property, actually to the paper road Bassett Lane. And I'm not quite sure what the status of that lane is at this moment, but at minimum, it'd be an easement over that lane. But I'd like to see the fact that there's a consideration of, on the site plan, of that sewer pipe easement for the property above. Because they're gonna have to get it down somehow when, you know, and if it's, that is septic up there and it's town property, I believe the town is gonna wanna see in that district, being the, you know, the 7-6 pond district, remove that waste, you know, from that development on top. Now, of course, we have a member of the Affordable Trust here tonight, he can certainly comment on that, but that's my request, that you folks work with the Affordable Trust on seeing what you can do to pre-plan sewer for both your development as well as the Affordable Trust land and the town land above. Okay, I'd like to see those plans done. And, you know, let us know when you think you guys get together and when you can present those plans before the end of the public sessions here. Okay. Yeah.
It is not a technical question. I know there'll be a lot of levels of review on the septic and everything, but more to the process in town with the sewer being developed is the best way I can afford it, or describe it is, down the street, Queen Anne, there's developable lots that are currently for sale that people will build single-family homes. And they're gonna put a septic system in, and whether it's 6 or 16 or 26 years from now, town's gonna come and say, it's ready, you need to connect, and there's, Christine can probably describe it better than me, but there's a procedure that says you have a certain period of time. From my expectation, Penrose should be held to the same exact standards, and the expectation is it's gonna be no different than any other single-family home that's being built currently in town. And I just wanna make sure that you agree that we're on the same page with this, and there's not gonna be some supplemental waiver request or something in the future that says, hey, we're a big development, we've got our own, sophisticated septic, and we don't want to connect because of the cost, which, is not something that's gonna be afforded to most single-family dwellers in town.
Understood. I think we'll have to prepare a response and report back to you on it.
Yep.
You don't think you can push that out tonight? I mean, I just.
I'm sorry?
Don't you have somebody who can do engineering plans while you're?
Yeah.
No.
Again, it's more the commitment. Again, I'm sure the technology will be whatever it is.
Right.
To me, it's more the process of saying, I think it's the same footing as anybody else in town, with the same expectations.
Understood. Okay, we'll circle back.
Yep.
Okay,
If I could speak,
Sure.
Marion,
Of
just for
course.
the record. If I could speak just to a couple of things on the septic and then ready to move on to the waivers of whatever
Sure.
else y'all would like to talk about. Hot off the presses last week, talking to the town administration, we are in phase 9 of the sewer rollout, and it's from 2049 to 2052. And I can submit this to the record if y'all would like. When the peer reviewer was speaking earlier, I had a couple of concerns. My understanding is the Cape Cod Commission is a reviewing entity in this process, and they filed their letter in March of this year, and they spoke to the wastewater treatment.
Yes.
And so I think that is their level of review.
I think the level of review is as if they're a department of Harwich,
Correct.
not
Correct. I just
any
wanted to
entity above it.
clarify that.
They're basically, the recommendation, the department, I don't believe they have any jurisdiction that I'm aware of.
And I think in the end, it was clarified that the state has jurisdiction for wastewater treatment plants that are they're producing over 10,000 gallons per day. This is under that. There was a little bit of back and forth about whether we were under that initially, but we clarified that we are under that. And so it's a Title V system that the local Board
Right.
of Health reviews for the state, and
That-
we're
that's
in
my
that
understanding.
process.
That's my understanding.
And then secondly, just, I think you all heard this as well, we sent a letter in yesterday to Carrie. She has received it. It has a lot of the information that you were asking for, but I do think it would be helpful to have a plain language narrative of what it means, because it's hard for a layman to understand.
Sounds like you
It's
met
hard
me
for a
before.
lawyer to understand at some point. So we will provide that, and included in that will be a discussion about the future sewer connection and the piping and all of that. And so, let's see if there's anything else. I think that's all I have on the Board of Health and wastewater.
Right. While you were talking about stormwater management at one point, and you referred to it as 25-year, but I thought it, discussions, and I believe, one of the earlier hearings we had, we discussed the fact that, we want to hold this development to a 50-year standard, not a 25-year standard.
Yes, I can clarify that. So we are holding it to actually the 100-year,
Right.
which is more conservative than the 50-year, but the 25-year that I had referenced was the pipe calculations that we prepared, and that is a regulation in Harwich that we provided those calculations.
Well, yeah, but how do you do a pipe for 25 years when you're going to be doing a 50? Again, try to explain it to me. I'm assuming a 25-year pipe might be this big, and a 50-year pipe might be that big. So now what happens to water in a 50-year storm management going down a pipe designed for 25? In simplistic terms, so I can understand.
So then it's going to the systems that are then sized for the 100-year storm.
It's overflowing?
Yeah, not
Yes.
quite help me out here. You understand it?
Somewhat, but, so you're saying that the 100 years is more the capacity of the ground to absorb in the retention ponds and stuff like that?
Yes, and just
It's
making sure that it's
the
not
destination
flowing.
of the water, not necessarily the collection system.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Well, up to the point, the fact that the destination depends upon how it's being collected. And if the collection system's on 25, what matters at the other end?
I'm not arguing with you, but I think that's what I heard, though, is that the collection,
So I just
pipes
need
of the
to have
collection
that.
system, the.
So can you explain the discrepancy? Why would a 25-year system handle a 100-year flood?
So it's the speed that it's going through the pipes. In the
Right.
25-year storm.
Yep.
And then the capacity of those pipes, but we're making sure it's not going too fast through the pipes, and it's pretty, like design practice that it's the 25-year storm that we design those
so-
to.
Please explain, when you have a 100-year storm, okay, which, probably I won't be around for, but when that happens, does the calculation of 100-year storm, is it based upon the length of time the storm happens, or the rate of the storm and waterfall? Because sometimes, so, to me, the 100-year storm idea means you've got, a big downfall of rain versus a normal casual spring rain. All right?
Yes.
And then you have a heavier rain, and then you got, okay, this is monsoon time. So I'm assuming a 100-year storm is like monsoon time. And how does this 25-year piping take care of that water, so now it's not overflowing into the abutter's property, which is probably already flooded out anyways, but the streets and so. So I just need to have you better explain that to me, because it's not connecting.
I'm trying to like put this into layman's terms. Like this, where it's just ensuring that it's not overflowing out of our systems, which are then sized for the 100-year storm.
Okay, so you're gonna be able to contain the water for a 100-year storm,
Correct.
but we're hoping the rate of speed of the rain coming down is at a 25-year clip. Is that, am I wrong in looking at it that way?
It might be a little simplistic, but
Well, that's my base at the moment, is simplicity.
Can I ask the consultant? Paul, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
That's outside of my
Okay,
depth.
that's
but-
fair. I just want to make sure I ask the
But
question.
I do suggest that you ask your peer review consultant, because that's right.
Okay, there you go. Frank, help me out here.
In a previous life, I did flood studies for about 10 years for FEMA.
Okay,
So my understanding is the standard, it's almost universal for roadway drainage design is for a 25-year frequency storm. 50, 60 years ago, it was maybe a 5 or 10-year storm, so they've increased it. That means that the water goes into the system through the catch basin grates or other things, and it can flow through the pipe. It's a 25-year frequency rainfall. It's a frequency thing, it's not. If you get a higher storm, or if you get a strange, you've got a week of rain, and you get 2 25-year storms in a row, or if the thing is clogged in your system, the water flows overland, and then you typically try to put it in some contained place. So I haven't looked at this generally, but things go down the hill, you've got a big basin and a low spot, I would presume most of the water from the site is gonna flow into the basin down the bottom of the hill. It has been designed to hold a 100-year volume of water. Whether it gets there during a 100-year storm the same way it would get there in a 25-year storm is probably different. There'll be more overland flow in the higher storm.
all right.
and that's how these things are designed,
That's
is what you're
typically
saying.
how they're designed, yes.
That's the destination, is
Bottom line, regarding our needs for the 50-year whatever management, are you satisfied at that system for stormwater management?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I'm done, okay.
One fun fact, by the way, one fun fact I've covered over the years, look at the old railroads
Right.
that were designed 200 years ago. They are above the 100 or 500-year storm. They picked the highest flood in history, and that's how they designed
All
it.
right.
So if you want to be safe, build your house above higher than a railroad.
They also built themselves on 24 inches of stone, so.
Yes.
Well, Frank's happy, I'm happy. All right, so.
Are we open for parking comments, or are we?
Yeah, we
done
can,
with-
why don't we jump in on parking? That'd be great.
You want me to make it, or what?
You can jump in first.
Well, I think you're gonna hear concern from everybody about parking. The other way I can express my concern again is personal experience. When my wife and I were first married, we lived in a condo complex, that only had 40 units, and we were, each person had one parking space, and there was a 50% overflow at that time. And I have 8 brothers and sisters. And when our first child was born, and I invited my whole family, as well as my wife's family, there was no room for anyone to park. So if it was a bigger complex, I would be more comfortable with the percentage. It's the size of the complex that just is, I have a struggle getting my head around, is saying 60 units, even one car per unit only leaves 15 guests, and if it was me, I'd fill all 15 myself. So that's the best way I can explain my concern about the parking. I'm not saying it has to get to 100. I don't think there's room to get to 100, but I just feel like there needs to be some more parking squeezed in on the site somewhere.
We believe that there's strong potential
Good.
for additional parking immediately off-site across from Bassett Lane. We're not promising that now because we're in conversations with the Affordable Housing Trust on that, and they're informally supportive, but the process needs to be followed to get there. And so it's possible, and we hear the concern about the number of parking spaces, and we're working in the way that we're able to provide more spaces.
When do you feel that yourselves and the Affordable Trust will be meeting to make a formal,
I think my colleague Brendan
Discussion
will
on this.
speak to that now.
Hi, Brendan Lowney, Affordable Housing Trust. We're meeting on May 11th, and that is one of the topics we'll be discussing, the parking situation.
okay. Will you folks be at that meeting as well?
We would happily be there.
More than happy to join.
Yeah, we're hoping to have some details with them, what they would need for parking, and if we can allocate some portion of the upper field, and then the Bassett Lane's in play as well. So there's a couple of things we'll be speaking about.
Okay.
Okay?
When you have that meeting, do you guys also talk about the sewer system for the eventual right-of-way for
Okay?
the Affordable Trust land?
Okay?
I'd appreciate that, whether it's,
Absolutely.
again, I don't know to what extent this board can make a condition that the sewer easement be provided, by Penrose, but I'll certainly be asking Amy Questle that question at some point. But I just assume, like I said in my opening remarks, these kind of conditions or concerns become a, partnership on, coming up with a mutual agreeable, decision and answer to accommodate, the future of the area and the community, so.
And you're in reference to the upper fields?
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yeah,
understood.
because I don't know how else you're gonna get, I'd rather see because of the Six Pond District, I'd rather see if we can get that sewage, out of the area. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Brennan. Okay, so, any other questions? I have a few parking questions.
I'll let you go first and we'll see if we cover it.
Okay, all right. Can we put up a site plan again?
Sure.
And Frank, I may be calling you to jump in on your remarks as well. But if you could make one that's a little bit bigger.
I think maybe slide 3 or 4?
Probably the C3
4.
and 1.
Yeah, that's good. Does this work, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, okay, all right, there you go. Well, first of all, you may have received my letter of April 17th regarding my memo, which I sent as an individual member of the Board of Appeals, and did not ask for any response, just wanted to indicate things that I might be bringing up during the meeting. So here we go, all right? All right, first of all, let's look at the center section, where we have the community house and the green area. Right, so one concern, and again, I visited all your properties on the Cape and in Wareham, all right? I didn't see in any of them where they addressed concerns on staging areas for delivery trucks or for moving in, And again, just going back in my past history with the most recent 40B situation, we brought this scenario up to them. They made adjustments in their plans for a designated space near most of the buildings for people to park their moving trucks or whatever, to stage it, so then they can move into the house without disrupting a lot of the parking areas for the people, or interfering with the road network in case of safety issues. All right, now, I will state the fact that some of these requests here, The fire department was just fine with your plan, and they felt the fact that my concerns were not theirs. However, it's not just a matter of safety. It's a matter of a neighborhood convenience. And having an environment where people are driving home at night, and all of a sudden, there's a big moving truck parked, and they can't get into a parking space. You know, or the inconvenience, the fact that this delivery truck is blocking their car when they're trying to get out, okay? Those kind of scenarios. So it's, again, it's not just a safety issue, but it's really, you know, developing a quality life, a quality environment, you know, for the people that are living in this neighborhood. All right, so it's, and one thought here is, again, I suggested, can you reduce the size of the green? And you knock off, you know, 8, 9 feet, whatever, around that area, you know, in front of the, not next to the building, but in front of it, and now you might be able to create parallel parking in that area. So that's just one thought. And of course, that would impact perhaps your, in some ways, some of your current design on septic, but that's okay. I don't mind you changing it, all right? But create parallel parking there. So now that's area for delivery trucks perhaps. Moving trucks could park there. And that way, when they're there, it just adds to, and you're increasing parking opportunities in that regards. The other,
Basically covers the entire.
you know, the other thing is that, you know, particularly, you know, again, a staging area for box trucks, and what they ended up doing at the Pine Oaks Village was creating areas where people then would register with the management. They reserve that spot because they're moving in Saturday between 9 and 1. That's the key thing here. And a lot of people are probably going to be moving, not on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but they're going to be showing up on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, with their U-Hauls or whatever, or they've hired somebody. And that's probably when you're going to have most of the parking areas that are going to be taken up. And now, where are they putting these trucks to get into the buildings? Okay. Now, obviously, you folks got experience with this. In my earlier career, I was a president of a condo association in Rhode Island that had 144 units and, you know, like 9 buildings. So I'm familiar with the situation, and we had areas where people could, you know, make sure they could stage their move-ins. All right. The 4 handicap spots that are available, all right? Now, you heard my earlier comments that it's not just because people are in wheelchairs, but it's those that, you know, quite frankly, need some extra help. All right. So I parachuted into Wareham, Swift Landing. And by the way, folks, it's architecturally wise, it's a quality environment. All right. The area, you know, the grounds were clean, well maintained. The building architecture, let's put it this way, it looked like you'd want it to look like if it was all market rate units. Okay, so there was no driving in here and thinking, oh yeah, this must be, you know, affordable housing. No, it looked great, okay? Eastham, less so, okay? All right, that didn't have the look I liked. So my understanding is that this Harwich facility development is going to have more of the architectural character that you showed in Wareham. And I'm pleased to hear that, okay? All right, now you've got 93 apartments in Wareham. At 6:05 in the morning, there were, you know, I counted 13 handicap parking spaces and 1 van parking space. 11 of those handicap parking spaces were occupied. Now, the percentage, again, I know it comes into bedrooms, but hear me out here. And I realize that this is a 55 and older community, that's how it's designed.
62.
I thought it was 55, that's okay, 60.
44 units of it are 55 and older.
55 and older, okay.
I believe that's correct.
And I'm assuming a lot of that might be building 1. I'm not quite sure. That was a three-story building.
That's entirely senior,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Anyways, there are 11 13 spots, of which most of them, 11 of these spots were all associated kind of up in front of the clubhouse and in front of buildings 1, 2, and in the front area. But 11 out of the 13 were occupied at that time. The handicap parking spaces to number of apartments ratio is 14%. Okay? The ratio you've offered for Harwich is 6.6%, which is half of what you offer based on apartment numbers, not necessarily bedrooms, but apartment numbers for Harwich. That's half, all right? And, you know, first of all, I just don't think there's enough, you know, relief parking, and particularly, you know, when the discussion was that, as Frank pointed out, you know, 300 feet away from building 14, you know, you gotta park your car and get a scooter if you have problems with walking. All right, so that's an issue I'd like to address. Now, based upon the town's parking requirement, which would be at 102, the state requirement would be at least 5 parking spaces. I mean, I realize you've got 77, the state requires only 4 of them, but being held to the 102 requirement by the state, you'd be required to have at least 5 handicap parking spaces. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go forward, okay? Regardless of the fact that I think that you need more handicap parking spaces, you know, throughout the development. Building 14, not having any parking associated with it, I think is just very difficult situation for anybody that would live in Building 14. And that needs to be addressed, okay, in my opinion. Okay. The other recommendation I have here, and again, you know, I'm not a you know, land architect or a building designer, but I look at Building 1, and my recommendation would be, and actually, part of my, as I mentioned in my letter, I sat down in a little meeting with a friend of mine that has actually experience with site development, and his immediate recommendation was to flip Building 1 with Building 3. Now you've got that, you know how long Building 1 is, where you take that section of it, you throw it on Building 1, and now in front of that area, there may be room for additional parking. And that additional parking could be associated to help out the folks on Building 14.
It's a septic conflict.
Huh?
It's a septic conflict, as currently designed.
They have time to solve that problem, okay? Oh, well, wait a minute, I believe they have time to solve the problem, okay? I would hope they have time to solve the problem, right? So, now it may also, because of the gradients, require you folks to put up a retaining wall. That's okay, it's brick and mortars, you know, you're in the business. So, but that, I think, if now you've got that area behind, which we now become, where Building 1 is now, and even up to, into, behind Building 2, you've established, I think, more area, you know, for potential parking, for everybody, and especially Building 14. Okay. And I'm sure you got a response coming up, and I'll wait for it, okay? All right. All right. The community buildings are a gathering spot for the community, and when I did have an opportunity when I was in Eastham, to go into your community building there. Nice building, okay? It had a nice spot for a living room type area, you know, for people for meetings, and then a kitchenette with more tables. And I think I got the impression that if folks in the community, and particularly when John's family, all 14 of them show up, they could reserve a room and be in there for, you know, their family party, whatever. You will invite me, John, won't you?
Of course.
Okay.
You're always on the list.
So, I thought that was pretty good.
Just as long as no one else, because we can't have a quorum.
You can't have a quorum, okay. So, there's no parking associated, you know, right now on the community building, okay? And also regarding, you know, where's your management gonna park? Because your management shows up, I'm sorry, they're taking away from the parking available to the residents. So you don't have 77 or 76, you have 2 managers working there, you really only get 74 parking spaces for the, for the community. Again, minor details, but just want to toss that out. So, basically, that's my key thoughts here. Looking for more convenience for handicapped people throughout the complex. Increasing parking spaces opportunities by doing that building flip, and how that might work. And reducing some of the green area, even if it's on one side, to create, create some parallel parking. The other thought, which I probably shouldn't even bring up because it might be, I don't think we can do that necessarily, is we were looking at the issues that Frank brought up, and also Dave, regarding the turn ratios and how it cuts into the parking along A Street, okay? Again, this is just a off-the-cuff notion, but we solved some of that problem by reducing the setback on that street for those buildings from 25 to 20 feet and create another 5 feet of area. And how would that go over with the town? In the abutters. So we move the buildings back 5 feet to solve that problem. Again, we're here for work together, but, the safety is number one, and those fire trucks or the school buses coming down, I want to make sure that they're not, how many people, it's, if you've been to a parking lot, people park all over the place, they're into the street. I mean, you're not gonna have a parking guard there watching how far people are making sure that they push all the way to the curb. Do we provide relief by reducing the setback, as a thought? And would that, be a waiver that you folks may wanna consider, that we should consider, and Christine, the planning department, to throw that out as well? That may solve a problem. Okay. So, I realize that you're working with the Affordable Trust regarding overflow parking, which is something we started talking about at the last meeting. For those not familiar with the idea, was that the Affordable Trust provide, say, 30 pieces of parking, which Penrose would be responsible, well, however they work it out, to develop. And in the future, based on how the plans go with the property up the north, should that mean that parking space is being impacted by what they want to do, well, they just, get a bulldozer out, and they actually create it with just stone, not tar it, just scrape it and put it someplace else, okay? And put up the parking signs and have that overflow, because this is not an area where people can be parking off-street on Queen Anne Road, nor Pleasant Street, okay? All right, so, all right, that's, I'll get off the podium. Soapbox, anybody else?
Well, just to that same comment I had made before about the truck access, when I had made the comment about the turning radius, the basic combination of the 20-foot roadway and the 18-foot space makes that turning radius very small, and any vehicle that is larger than your 18-foot is going to encroach upon your space. The most common Ford F-150 is 19 feet long. Common options bring that vehicle out to 20 feet. Now, whether or not your residents own that vehicle, certainly some of the people working on the site that are going to be showing up will. And my concern is that if they're parked along roadway A, and a fire truck or a school bus or something has to come in there, they may not be able to make that turn anymore. So that's fundamentally what I was getting to at that geometry. To Brian's earlier point, if that roadway can be made a little bit wider, because, if you can move and widen Street A and possibly any of the other streets, then that would help solve that problem. But that's the problem and issue that I was getting at earlier.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's excellent. That's why, like, the parallel parking or whatever for the designated area for service trucks, which may make sure they allow for 20 feet, because when the repair trucks show up, they're a lot bigger than most people's cars. And also, guess what? I mean, this is a community that's going to hopefully cater to and provide residents for,
Workforce.
for the workforce. And guess what? That workforce, well, some of them are, tradesmen. They're gonna have bigger trucks. And where are they parking? And not be into the public way. So that's a, concern there.
Just the one thing I want to add is to address the seriousness of the issue of doing something with parking that works for everyone, whether it's widening the streets, better access for emergency vehicles, smaller green space, parallel parking all the way around. Don't know what the answer is, but I will tell you that as a personal voter, this is a non-negotiable for me. If we don't increase parking in some capacity, I will not be supporting this project. So that's how important this is.
Did I suggest a quick recess?
What, after that remark?
Yeah.
Maybe it's needed?
No, that was good.
No, it's- Hey, let's go for, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, I'm happy to provide responses to any of that, or if you want to take a break and then we
Let's
can.
let's go for 5 minutes.
Okay.
How's that? All right, everybody in agreement? Okay. So how's your first meeting going? Whole gang back in.
Give them a chance now to respond.
Yes, hold on a second. Well, I didn't know, all right. John, do you have any other questions before we have the applicant respond to our comments? Do you have any other questions?
No.
All right, find a couple other things I have here. If I caught a memo right, there was discussion with the school department, but they won't make a commitment. Is that correct?
The response from them was, yes, there was discussion with the schools department. It was that they are amenable and supportive of having the stop within the development, and they looked at the site plan and said, yep, we would go in there. They don't make their route determinations so far in advance, given that there
Okay.
won't be people here for 2+ years.
So you're comfortable they're gonna provide something?
Yes.
Okay. So, when they do pull up into the site, okay, and I realize bus unloading and loading, unloading, it's a matter of, 4 minutes. I mean, I don't know how, but I'm just guessing that's how long it takes. So, I realize that when they pull in, like any time on the roads, buses stop, people will stop behind it, and, the flags come out. And so it's may at that point be inconvenient for folks who are parking and leaving, but guess what? The school bus is there, you can't move anyways. All right. Are you gonna have, would like to see you have a covered area for the kids to stand, waiting for the bus.
Yeah, we actually spoke about where we think makes sense within the property. We haven't made any final decisions about where a bus stop would be, but having it be located near the community building, which will have a covered porch and obviously a vestibule that's close to the elements, we think.
But that's in the front of, that's in the front of the building towards the green.
Nope, the access on the right-hand side, plan right, as we're
Oh.
looking at this. I think you're referring to like the pergola and the
Okay.
deck at the back, but there's a front entryway that'll have a covered area, and then obviously the heated and cooled vestibule as well, so that could be a logical spot.
All right. Your Eastham property, forget about Orleans, Eastham property had bike racks all over the place. Okay.
Bike paths
The
right across
others,
street.
the others not so much.
Bike paths right across Route 6, though, right, from there. Yeah,
Actually, the same side of Route 6.
same side.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I understand, good point, all right, but the, I'm assuming, because other scenarios, that we expect people that when they have kids, that they're gonna bring their bikes inside the house. That's the deal, correct? Not leaving them outside, and, because they really don't, like in your Wareham, what's happening with bus pickup there, and how many kids are grabbing the bus out of the Wareham facility?
I don't know. I don't know the stats of
Okay.
of the children.
The on-site management. So I'm at Orleans, and there's nobody there. And I understand the fact that you have a manager who I met a person, a facility manager in Eastham, okay? Who I gather is splitting duty between Eastham and Orleans, all right? And one comment from one resident I spoke to in the parking lot, and they're a happy resident, but, you know, that they're not sure when management's gonna be on board. Just tossing that out, okay? So what's happening, what are the plans for management schedules that are gonna be available, that's gonna make the clubhouse available and open? Otherwise, it's closed when management's not there, I'm assuming.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of staffing, Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 9 to 5, 5 days a week for the property manager being on staff. In terms of access to the clubhouse, it's not limited to that. Usually it's residents will have a key fob or something so that
get
they
in.
can
Okay.
access the fitness room, the community room, whatever it may be. So no, it is not limited to the same hours.
So, Wareham also, when I was there, there was the postage delivery was outside in a big, you know, not big area, but, you know, nice convenient little place there. It showed, at first I was thinking you only had 52 apartments there, because it was numbered 1 to 52, and then below it were larger, and actually the keys were in it, you know, larger like package delivery situation. So, how is mail delivery gonna be handled for Harwich?
So what you would have seen at Wareham, just to make sure we're clear, I think you're referring to like the outdoor kiosk.
Correct.
Which would be for the 49 non-age restricted townhome units that are scattered around.
Okay.
That doesn't include the 44 age restricted units, which are in their own 3-story building that you were noting before. They have an indoor mail room.
That's what I figured at that point, okay.
A post person delivers. Here, it's early days, I guess, from a design perspective. We could either do a kiosk outside so people can walk up and have keyed entry. We could also have a mail room within the clubhouse. I don't know, Paul, if you want to chime in on that, you're welcome to. But I think we're open to feedback on if folks have a preference on it.
Yeah, and what?
Yeah, this is Paul. At the clubhouse, there's a covered porch facing Plan East. That is the entry to the clubhouse from the Street A. And under that covered porch is the bank of mailboxes. And they have to be a certain height for accessibility. And so really there's a shelf at about 4 feet high that is the depth of the built-out mailboxes that we could use for package storage and convenience. So we do have mailboxes considered and an approach to parcel pickup and drop off. And we also imagine that if Amazon comes, they might go bring it right to the front door.
So where are people parking when
Each
they
of
go
the
there?
residents.
Thanks, Paul.
Pardon?
Where are people parking their cars when they go to get their mail?
I mean, people are gonna stop on their way in to get their mail. It's just another traffic obstacle on the main road, right?
Also, your 4 ADU units,
ADA?
ADA units, excuse me, they need handicap parking to access their mailboxes as well.
Okay, we can discuss that further. I think with.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yeah, I think with regards to the ADA accessible parking spaces adjacent to the clubhouse, so the accessible route into the clubhouse, it's kind of hard to see on this plan. So not this ramp, this is a back of house, like workshop entrance, but on this side, in between these 2 trees, that's where the ramp is to get up onto the covered porch and where the
Okay.
mailboxes are. And the main entrance is roughly around here. So these spaces are pretty much as close as they can be to the accessible path in here. We can talk about if there's interest in designating one of these parallel parking spaces as an ADA space. We're open to that. It's a little more difficult to have a parallel parking space be an ADA space than a nose-in or a head-in space, just because of space constraints, but that's something we're open to.
Well, I appreciate being open to it. I think for anybody that is handicap accessible, and whatever, they need to have a parking space there,
Understood.
okay? All right,
Sorry.
and the other issue that Frank brought up, and it was on my card as well, regarding, a walkway access to Queen Anne Road. Now, I realize that I hadn't considered the gradient problems of the 5%, 10%, whatever we're discussing here, so I understand that, and I realize from education tonight here is the fact that if you are gonna do a walkway, it can't be the town's answer for, a skateboarding park, okay, that you're worried about the gradient. However, that walkway does not have to necessarily follow straight down that driveway. It could be, a little more meandering around the gradients and come out elsewhere on frontage on Queen Anne Road. It does not have to follow the driveway, and my recommendation would be, I would like to see consideration of a site plan where you take a sidewalk and you bring it down and consider the gradient levels, and perhaps at some point, need to build, like a retaining type wall or walkway at a proper gradient level so that people can get access to Queen Anne Road without necessarily following down the driveway.
Right. If I respond to that, you're exactly right on most of that. First off, for big sidewalk people, if we had our druthers, we absolutely would have this connecting to Queen Anne Road. The couple criteria that we would look at are, is it connecting to something else? And currently, there is no sidewalk on Queen Anne Road. We always want to make sure if we're investing, we connect, right? But the second one, you're entirely right that following the driveway is not feasible because of the grade. We did look at the jogs that would be necessary to snake down and be
Be a
compliant.
pleasant walk,
Unfortunately, we would lose.
flowers along the side of the sidewalk could be nice.
We would lose almost all of the tree buffer that we've sought to preserve, and there would be interference with the septic field that's been planned for that area and that I think you were noting before. So I think, we're, I think,
Bottom line, people are gonna walk anyways,
understood,
all right? So the alternative is they're walking on the driveway.
understood.
So what you force them to do at an inappropriate grade.
So they're walking on the driveway so they can walk on Queen Anne.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd rather walk on the driveway than walk on Queen Anne.
if I can,
Well,
if I
I'm
can
just
add-
throwing that out, just on the sidewalks. Yeah,
Add
did
to
that.
that comment, though, I believe in the previous meeting, you talked about, extending the flex bus service, and that how with Pine Oaks 4, there may be enough people involved in potential ridership that maybe a future bus goes down Queen Anne Road. That would be another reason why you would want a walkway to get from, all these units and all these people to get them down to Queen Anne Road. Even if there is no sidewalk along Queen Anne Road, there
It's
may
an
be a
excellent
future
point.
bus service there.
Excellent point. People, and there will be people looking for bus service.
Right, but you don't want when we talked before about traffic and everything, you don't want that on the left side of the entrance.
Oh, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I think it's just I don't know what my level of concern is. Right now, it's an issue that need to explore myself personally, as well as
Look
ask a
into it.
question.
Understood.
All right? But I did want to throw out the idea of a meandering sidewalk that reduces the grade scenario. And
Mr. Chairman, as I might, I think we said we're referring that to our attorney, because Frank made a comment of whether or not that may be a requirement, even though it's not a public street, so we're already referring that to our attorney.
Okay, just remind me about that, and whatever.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I think, John, Chris, any questions?
That's enough for tonight.
Okay. John has shut me off for tonight. Your response, folks, on all this.
Okay, sure, yeah, I'll try my best to ping through the different open items here. So, thank you very much, and thank you for the clear memo. It's appreciated and great to have something to refer to. Okay, so I'll start speaking about the driveway widths, the moving trucks, the delivery. So, stepping back, our priority and our goal and our job on every project is to build something that works, right? We need it to work from a life safety perspective, for resident quality of life, is respectful of butters, and, you know, so getting the fire department sign off, as you noted, is a key part of making sure that it works from a life safety perspective. They've confirmed that even if a delivery truck is in there, it's not a concern in terms of their accessibility from a life safety perspective. In terms of having moving vans, deliveries, things like that, 60 units in terms of delivery trucks is not that large a number where a FedEx truck is going to be camping out for an extended period of time. It's likely going to be a relatively brief visit. And having the on-site management presence that we do during all working hours, part of their job is just to help ensure that things are functioning properly on the property and that things are working. So if there is a blockage or something like that that is in the way of somebody specifically that is trying to reach their car or get out, that's something that we would look to the management company to help handle. For folks that are moving, I think you hit the nail on the head that this is the way it works at other properties of ours. If folks give notice ahead of time, then they can go out and cone whatever it is, 2 or 3 spaces for a couple of hours to allow for a moving van to come in there, approximate to their unit.
Is that what happens now?
I think, yes, that's my understanding, yes. And having the overflow parking that we're talking about and that we're hoping to get buttoned up, we can speak more to that down the road. But that's something that hopefully can bring some comfort as well, where if there are some spots that are temporarily blocked off for a moving van or whatever, then we have that spillover available right adjacent to it. Regarding the driveway widths and some of the comments about can we widen the roads, shrink the green space, and things like that. The way that we've configured this site plan and the way we try to handle all site plans really across our properties is to achieve a balance and address concerns both logistical and physical, and then some more qualitative design features as well. So the logistical and physical would be first and foremost life safety. We've already talked about that. Second would be to make sure that we are preserving the open space plan that we've committed to here. The open space is especially important here, not just for quality of life of residents, environmental sustainability reasons, but it is on top of the septic field. So any shrinking, for example, of the central green space is creating a conflict with the septic field that has been designed and really is a bespoke solution for the space that we have, and making sure that it's a septic system that meets all requirements and serves all the units well. So those are the physical constraints for why it is not easy, and we think it's appropriate to not expand the width of the road. Qualitatively, we know that this is a priority as well. First is that having appropriately sized roads, not oversized driveways, is a measure of traffic calming. We know it's a very well-established planning fact in this country that wider roads, wider lanes means faster cars. We hope there are children here. We hope there are people walking around and enjoying the vitality that this site plan we think can offer. And having an environment safe from cars that are induced to move quickly through the space, we see as a positive, a design feature we try to incorporate in many of our developments, while obviously still complying with all the logistical and life safety concerns. The crosswalks, having them be narrower, that's where the majority of of collisions between people and cars occur, so shrinking the crossing distance. Again, kids hopefully trying to reach the playground, reach the community gardens, the central green. What we propose, we think, is appropriate in terms of a crossing width for those folks. And then maybe most qualitatively, a big feature of our site plan, going back to the RFP proposal, and the reason why we've included this central green as kind of a main feature of the entire program is because of this beautifully Cape Cod idea of having all of these units that are looking out and have this direct visual and physical connection to the green space. That's a part of the reason why we oriented the parking on the near side and not in parallel along the green space, because people are looking out directly into the green space. Widening the road, adding more parking on that side of the street just means we're going to be diminishing that connection, visual and physical, so that folks are, maybe not looking out of the green space as much and more at pavement and other folks' cars. So understood on where this is all coming from. We hope that the conversation with the trust about the overflow parking can alleviate some of these concerns. They're all valid. We hear where they're coming from. But we're always wanting to be careful about appropriately sizing our driveways and not oversizing them.
I'll just click on that note, and guys, because my visit to the Wareham site, what he's referring to, I saw that in Wareham, and the green area was, it was a nice viewpoint, it was a nice area, well-maintained, and I can see I can understand your comments regarding people's visual view of the greenery versus another parked truck or car. I understand the valid point you're making there.
Thank you.
Okay.
With that, I'll talk about the handicap or ADA spaces. As we noted before, we have 3 ADA units in the property. The ADA spaces are located physically close to those. As I mentioned, 2 of the spaces are approximate to the ramped entrance into the community building. We can add an additional space, ADA accessible, in front of the community building. That's something we can do. We could even do another, if it is of interest, we can add another one somewhere else scattered within the property as well.
But of course, that takes away from somebody else that's not needing an ADA.
You have a copy of my notes? I was just said, I would note that
You already have a problem.
adding ADA spaces isn't just adding the sign, it's adding the physical dimensions to make sure that it's ADA accessible. So that's something we'll look at and make sure that we're not diminishing the overall parking count. Yeah, and it's a fact what Carmen says, the more spaces we dedicate and reserve for ADA, we are reducing like for like the open population. And going back to something I mentioned off the cuff earlier, once the move-ins happen, we have the management company on site. They're always happy to talk to folks and manage, whatever the population looks like, who moves in here. As you noted, there may be a large number of seniors that come in here because these are 1-bedroom apartments, a lot of them. If we need to make reasonable accommodation for additional ADA spaces, that's something we can do. I would also say that per your note, the potentially high number of senior households and living in these 1-bedrooms is actually a mitigant of driving parking demand as well, since we know that those are smaller households on average than other 1-bedroom occupant households. But, and going back to the Wareham note that you made, I think you called out the mitigating factor that almost half of that property is age-restricted affordable housing. So, because it is senior housing, we would necessarily provide more ADA units, or ADA spaces out of the box than this, which does not have any age-restricted housing. Okay. The next one is on the parking and proximity to certain buildings. I 100% hear the comment, and I think it is easy to assume that every resident's priority is having a car parking space immediately outside their door.
Probably would reasonably.
We do know in practice that it is a mixed bag in terms of what folks are looking for. Some folks do want that, a lot do. Other folks would rather have landscaping and trees at the front door of their property instead of a row of other folks' cars. So this plan as proposed includes both. It's heavily biased towards having spaces directly in front of folks' front doors. But there are a handful of units where, you're right, they may have to walk to the next parking bay over to access their car, or, walk a few extra feet. If folks, as you mentioned, do have legitimate health concerns and reasons to have a designated spot directly outside of their unit, that's something our management team is more than happy to accommodate if there's a medical reason for doing it. Okay. We already spoke about the ongoing maintenance and landscaping. I can't remember if it was in your comments, Mr. Chair, or in the note of topics, but I'll just briefly say that I think there was a comment floating around about the way of screening or fencing the trash receptacles, and a request for,
Well, you have one of your, dumpster areas which you don't want to have fenced in.
so I think what we had shown was a three-sided screen with the front. I think it was in reference to, or in regards to, sometimes the front door is, left open and blowing in the wind, or
I
residents
think you have
leaving
a
it open.
waiver not to screen
But-
one in totally.
We're happy to screen it in 100%. We can do a four-sided screen, no problem.
Now, I also noticed that in Wareham, you've got the dumpster, and it wasn't trashy, it looked fine. Each of the two dumpsters in Wareham had 4 to 6 recyclable bins on the exterior of it. All right, is that the same plan for here?
We would meet whatever the local requirements are.
I don't know what the local requirements are, but
No idea.
I would,
Yeah, likely screened.
yeah, I would anticipate that we would include it inside the screen here.
Yeah, I mean, there are recycling bins, and it's for ease of people throwing it in, but we can, they're the,
I'm not saying it's a bad idea having them outside. I'm just noting the fact, let everyone know that there were those big blue with orange top recycling bins.
Yeah.
There were 4 to 6 of them, next to each dumpster. And
Outside of the screening.
outside the screening. And the question is whether or not that's gonna be the plan for Harwich. And I don't know what the viewpoint of the board is, and what the viewpoint of the health department, and planning department are on it, but I'm just tossing it out, that's what I
Sure.
saw there.
I'd say we're not married to anything, and we're happy to take feedback on that.
Okay. If you're gonna do that, then on your plans for the size of the dumpster area, you should be able to incorporate the sizing to, to make that happen.
Understood. They are, Mark Warfel from Crowley Cottrell is noting that the recycling bins are drawn as inside the enclosure,
Okay.
as proposed.
Hey, good recovery.
Recovering from me. Okay. I think those were most of the comments that I wanted to address. I think this was not one that you brought up, Mr. Chair, but it was an open item on the list that got sent to us regarding the utility easement, the 10-foot right-of-way as shown at the 446 Queen Anne Road property here. This is a diagram that we showed in the last meeting. So after the last hearing, we were asked to look at this right-of-way easement that had been highlighted on our plans. We don't have any plans to build in that area, still don't. It will be preserved as open space. I know the abutter at 446 had asked us to confirm if her property had any defined rights to that easement. And Marion, you're welcome to
Sure,
fill in
I
the
can
blanks
jump
if
in
you
on
want.
that.
Go ahead, yeah.
I looked at that, and there's a boundary dispute agreement, or boundary agreement, that outlines what the rights of both parties, the Marceline property owners and Ms. Childs, and she has no rights. She's specifically given away any rights that she might have had
Okay.
in that right of way. And I submitted that to the town, so.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with
Okay.
that, we're good.
Do we still, one question is, what's it for? Do we know?
There were complicated, when I was looking at the boundary agreement, there were complicated rights between the two parties. So
Usually
there's
it's
not
for
a history of
access
what
or-
that right-of-way was
Oh.
for, but basically, the Marceline owners were on some of her land, and she was using some of their land, and they came to an agreement on the proper bounds.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Thanks for reminding me. So, wanted to address briefly the comment about the, asking us to look at flipping of Building 1 and Building 3. And Paul, I know you're on, and you can fill in the blanks here. So first I'd say Building 1, I know Paul and his team have designed this. It's a specific building typology that is meant to address two streets. That's why it's shaped the way that it is. That's why the entrances are the way that it is. The porches are the way that they are. You're right to identify that the road is at a significantly lower grade than where this building is. So they're not actually walking, people are not walking out of their units and out to the street. They're walking out and making a left on their sidewalk to get out here. But in terms of the architectural design itself, it's meant to be anchoring a corner. That's the way that it was designed. Now, if you were proposing just setting that to one side, to flip this over here, first off, as Mr. August noted correctly, you are cutting into some of the septic infrastructure, which we don't have a logical place to put. You had mentioned you may be facing new retaining walls. This was designed, I think we spoke in a previous hearing, specifically to eliminate the need for retaining walls, both because it's a cost and a grading, a civil engineering issue, but also because of the visual cue of entering the site where we're trying to avoid having these. I mean, had these buildings not been situated the way that they are here, we would have been, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like a 12, 15-foot retaining walls on both sides of the entryway, which we didn't think was desirable and was something in meetings with various town staff they weren't interested in either. So that's the reason why the buildings are where they are. I appreciate the creativity on the thought process, though. Paul, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think as it's strategically placed on the corner, we have 3 doors facing Street C, 3 doors fronting Street A, opposite of Building 14. And as a visitor or a resident turns off into the neighborhood from Queen Anne Road, you're seeing front doors and buildings as you would trying to establish the streetscape. If Building 3 were anchoring that corner, the first thing you would see is a big parking lot and back doors and patios in the back of the building on the Building 3. So and also the tail end of Building 1 is stepped down to Ryan's point to help with the falling grade down to Queen Anne Road. So it's been designed very specifically for that corner condition.
Okay, I think those were the comments that I wanted to address. Anything else?
I think
for
that's
you
good.
or any of our team? I know we want to speak to the requested waivers, but
We're not going to do waivers tonight.
That's great,
Okay.
because what I'd like to do next time, if possible, is there are certain things, the access to Bassett Lane, whether it's a public road or not, that will also add some waivers, if that's true, because it'll create a front yard. It's not going to change the design of what we're doing, but I will need to paper those. And so I can do, if it's considered a public road, we need these waivers and make the waiver list more comprehensive for next time.
Excellent point regarding if Bassett Lane becomes a public road, that you now have a frontage issue for that back line of buildings.
Correct.
Hadn't occurred to me till you said that.
Right. It
I'm
occurred to
sure-
me about a week ago.
I'm sure that, a waiver could happen, if that's the case. On a side note, which has, and Chris brought up something earlier about wanting to discuss that, and I mentioned the fact we ought to wait till the next meeting to get into Bassett Lane and a Route 124 turnoff. But looking forward to that discussion. My personal feeling is if we're able to accomplish a right turn out of to 124, in my opinion, again, I don't have much of a traffic background here, so let's keep that in mind. But having a right in and right out from 124 And again, while you're meeting with the Affordable Trust, bring this up as well, the fact that at some point, when they do it, I don't think it's necessary for your development this time. I think that's off the books. I don't think Bassett Lane, my personal feeling is, access in Bassett Lane is not needed for your development, nor is a 124 right-hand turn needed for your development. So none of that connecting to Oak Street, from my point of view, is off the books for this. But whatever happens up north is going to be interesting. However, if they do a right-hand turn access, I want you guys to negotiate, and my recommendation is that like they have access through your property, that you have an easement to utilize 124. And in my opinion, if that 124 becomes real, and I hope the Affordable Trust starts now to look at it and work with the state, that there would not be a need for Bassett Lane being connected to Oak Street. I think that goes away, in my opinion, because now a lot of the traffic, a lot of people are going to be leaving the new development up there. I believe a whole bunch of them are going to be exiting out their right-hand turn at Route 6, and there won't be a need to go to Oak Street. And we eliminate the idea and the expense of building a road on Bassett Lane to Oak Street. Maybe the town may think differently than my personal point of view, with my deep engineering background and traffic studies, but that's my opinion, okay? And I have one question, and we're gonna get to public comment, and I think we seem to be wearing down a lot of people, some people have left. So recently I saw, and just throwing this out, because I like to, you don't have to necessarily answer this now, but recently the CPC in town here got turned down for supporting housing in Chatham, where they had requested $100,000 towards 2 Chatham developments. I think, actually, they're Penrose. In looking that over and looking at some research, when Orleans was done, there was, I think, the CPC funding towards that project there. Now, as a result of the town giving $100,000 to the Orleans Affordable Housing Project, when you did the local preference for that project, I think 6 units were allocated for Harwich-connected residents, whether they worked in Harwich or lived in Harwich. Now, this town, spending $100,000 to secure 6 affordable housing units, I thought, my personal feeling is, was an excellent investment. All right. And asking that is, has there been discussion regarding Orleans or Chatham allocating money for your project, I hate to use project, for your development, which would take local preference allocation away from, would include their residents for local preference allocation?
Do you want to speak?
Carmen Chung with Penrose.
Carmen?
Just a point of clarification is that with the local preference, the kind of additional towns that contributed CPC funding, it wasn't like each town got set aside. Each town that contributed money that wasn't the Orleans was part of the other local preference. So it's not that Harwich got six units. I don't know the exact kind of number of units that was part of the other kind of local preference. But I just want to make that clarification that's not a set aside. You just get a little special priority with the other towns that also contributed CPC money to the project. But you can speak to.
All right.
Saying if there weren't.
In summary, wait a second. All right. If Harwich had not given $100,000 towards the Orleans project, would they have gotten 6?
No, they wouldn't have. You wouldn't have been part of the
Okay,
local
fine.
preference.
So my question here is are you folks going to be looking at Chatham or Orleans to contribute to this? And how does that impact local preference for Harwich residents?
Yes, the answer is we have submitted applications to 7 or 8 different CPCs on the Cape,
Okay.
as I believe they did at Orleans as well. And any that contribute would hopefully, again, at the state's discretion, be part of a other local or contributing local town's preference. Whether it is additive on top of the initial Harwich local preference or within it, I don't know off the top of my
Yeah, can
head.
you-
We'll have to report back.
Can I have just let you know it? I mean, and had the town approved that expenditure, what would be the perhaps local preference that would have been given for that $100,000 that the town said no to?
We can go more in detail as to what happened.
Yeah, I'm interested in that, you know.
Yeah.
Not that it comes out of our jurisdiction, but it really, again, it doesn't, the concern is, well, the issue is, I want to know if by the donation, you know, that comes to you from other communities for this, if it lessens Howard's local preference allocation or not.
Understood.
And if it doesn't, that's terrific. And I wish, you know, the town would consider these things when they turn down opportunities to find affordable housing for our residents. Didn't expect that one, did you?
No.
Okay. All right, it is, we're gonna get into, next, we'll look into probably adjourn this meeting at 9:30. And I'd like to get into public comment period time, if I could. And basically, we're gonna be looking at I realize we have a reduced audience, but also, can we get the map off the screen? Because I want to see who's on board, if I have anybody that's called in that is interested in speaking. So we need to, okay, see who we got there. Let's find out if there's, so, again, you've all heard this one before. You know, we're going to call upon you for your public comments. And when speaking, please consider comments previously made, and if possible, adjust your statements to expand upon previous opinions rather than repeat them. Everyone will be given 3 minutes to express views and ask questions. At the 2.5-minute mark, my vice chair is going to notify you that you have 30 seconds remaining. Our questions should be directed to the chair, not the applicant. After asking a question, we request you take your seat. Anticipating that some questions may require preparation to answer, if they're not immediately addressed, they will be noted and eventually answered tonight or at a future meeting. My goal is to hear as many opinions as possible, and if your time expires, and we still have time on the clock, then you're welcome to come back up and complete your opinion and questions, okay? So, that being said, is there anybody in the audience here tonight that would like to be heard? Yes, sir. Yeah, please come to the podium, and
Is there a sign-in?
I didn't check, but I bet there is.
Just me.
Is there anyone else tonight that wants to speak?
But afterwards, please.
Okay. So you have the floor, 3 minutes of time for half an
I'll
hour.
have like a 20 seconds, so please allow that if
Oh,
that
take your
occurs.
time.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Tom Stapleton of 33 Red Pine Drive, and I'm here to request that the ZBA set a condition of approval that this project use all available 13 acres and eliminate Phase 2. This property is within the Six Pond Special District that Cape Cod Commission determined to be of critical planning concern and unsuitable for development regarding water supply and rare species conservation. So important that 10 pages of restrictive requirements were added to our bylaws, and over $3 million is spent to protect it. Knowing this, the HAT purchased this property and irresponsibly subdivided it, cramming, as you guys saw this evening, 60 units on a 5.4 acres. That's about 10 times more than the allowable. It's a hard number to figure, but that's what I got. Disregarding the very bylaws meant to protect it. The current design covers about 90,000 square feet of impervious surfaces, and the access road would add an additional 27,000 square feet of such. This would allow inadequate land for water absorption and filtering, resulting in excessive runoff and massive nitrogen and phosphorus feed directly into Aunt Edie's Pond. Penrose is struggling to stay below 10,000 gallons of water per day. which is acceptable in some areas, but far from what Six Pond allows. It gets worse. They're planning a second development on 7.4 acres and a quarter-mile asphalt road I discussed. And trends indicate that they will maximize units and may unleash a second assault on the Six Pond district. You see it. No plan has been presented or integrated with the present design, and we have no idea how big it will be. This project may allocate another 10,000 gallons per day of wastewater, reaching a potential 20,000 gallons per day. This approach results in a second assault, as I said, on regionally valuable wetland for future water, drinking water, and is substantially faulted and should be stopped. The proposed condition of approval would remove the artificial development boundary, expanding to the full 13 acres. This would allow us to create a design emulating the character of our town, enhance privacy buffers, reduce building heights to below 30 feet, supply safety vehicle access, increase open space, adequate parking space, and quantity. All this in addition to greatly reducing the environmental impact that threatens future water supply. Chapter 40B,
If
Section
I could
20.
stop you just for a second, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to allow him to continue beyond the 3-minute mark.
Absolutely. All
Okay,
those
and I'll
in
slow
favor?
down, because I
Yeah,
got.
take your time, I want to hear this.
Take your time.
All right, I put a lot of time into this.
I think this is an
That's why I wanna
excellent
hear it.
presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, Chapter 40B, Section 20, which someone mentioned earlier, directs us to be consistent with local needs and to protect water, right out of the book. Protect water, safety, and preserve open spaces, which is currently not the case. I'll take this minute. When I look at this plan, I'm an engineer as well. When I look at this plan, I see these guys trying really hard, I get it, to stuff 60 units on this piece of property. I lived in a subdevelopment, we had 6 acres across the way, and when I look at the buildings that are on this page, and I imagine them in my mind no way. It's way, 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 way overstuffed. Excuse me. Okay, so consistent with local needs and to protect water, safety, and preserve open spaces, which is currently not the case. The condition of approval presents an economical and balanced solution, again, per that code, that would move Harwich to 8.5% of the 10% affordable housing target, ranking us 3rd highest on the Cape. So if we get to 60 units coupled with the POV, we're up to 8.5%. And this would allow us to apply for a safe harbor, which I think we can do right now. I don't know that you guys have done that, but I think we're at that state right now. We could be safe harbor and get the state to leave us alone. We have much more leverage if we become safe harbor. And I'm surprised that we're not right now. But that's just my thought. Having spent 10 years on the ZBA in Massachusetts, I truly appreciate the weight and difficulty of your task. And I do. I've sat on that side of the table for 10 years. I get it. It's hard what you're doing. In this case, it's harder than anything I ever faced, to be honest with you. But I implore you use the powers granted and limit the impact to our town simply by mandating that 60 units be placed on 13 acres. There's a handful of successful legal cases that support this responsible decision, and it is clearly the right thing to do. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. 2 things. One, I would appreciate that you could take your comments in the form of an email and send it to Rachel. Oh, you have it?
I gave her 5 copies for it.
Okay, but, yeah, and somehow, if you have it on a Word.
I can email it in.
If you'd email it in, I'd appreciate it, okay?
Thank you.
Second, on the way out the door tonight, we see Rachel for an application to join the board.
Yeah, I expected that.
Okay.
Okay. You know, would it trouble this board if I sent this to the Cape Cod Chronicle?
No?
No, I have no jurisdiction over that, that's fine.
You're here.
You can hand it to him there.
Yeah, you can hand it to him.
If you want to contact me, please do. Great.
I don't think he
really
charges,
respect you guys.
I don't think he charges a fee for hand delivery, so you're in good shape. Okay. All right, anybody else that wants to address?
We have somebody online,
Okay.
Catherine Childs.
Catherine, I think you're being unmuted as we speak. Okay.
Hello.
Well, Catherine, go right ahead, and as we opened up it for a little bit longer for this last gentleman, that you're not restricted at the moment, okay?
Oh, no, that's fine. He basically took all my thunder. Great job, Tom. Thank you for all your research. Catherine Childs, 446 Queen Anne Road. Basically the same concerns. The size and the scale of this is just unbelievable. They are stuffing everything into a little spot. Just because it's open land does not mean that we need to maximize everything. And again, my other concern was the water supply on Cape Cod. They're talking about in Barnstable all the time, with all that development there, that there's absolutely no water. So I think we're going in the same direction. They basically covered everything else. Adding the water supply with the irrigation, which, we're all limited to during the summer, putting a water truck in there to supply water. I don't see how that's affordable to making affordable housing. Another one that nobody has really said anything about is snow removal in this small space. If we ever have a winter, which we will, again like that, which is nights and weekends, with all the cars there, it would be impossible. And then what would you do with it? Then again, the traffic, 124 corridor, it's already high risk already. I travel it every day and it's horrible at all times a day. And then again, with Pine Oaks still not even being there, we don't know what that's going to be. So putting the two in. So I guess I would like the board to consider either definitely reducing would be great. If nothing else, a smaller scale, it's too big. So thank you for having me. And I hope we can all come to a conclusion that works for everybody.
Thank you for your comments, Catherine. Appreciate it. Any other comments from the audience tonight? Okay. I was going to leave the comment period open in case somebody wants to say something, but one question, again, after I talked about being in Wareham, what is the acreage at that development?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to follow up.
Would you send an email to us regarding the acreage?
Sure.
Again, visually seeing it, and if you might send an email regarding also the acreage that's being used at Orleans as well as Eastham, just to kind of look at, I actually, I felt there was a lack of, in Wareham, of other handicap parking outside of the front of the area here, but I didn't feel the fact that it was cramped, okay, Wareham. So knowing what your acreage is and so forth might help me, perceptive, to perceive like how this might look at if it was Harwich and what you're doing there. You had 12 buildings, 12 buildings in Wareham. Of course, one of them was a much bigger facility footprint, which had a lot more apartments into it, but it was still 12 buildings. In visually understanding that and the size just might help me perceive better the concept, what's being addressed. And I welcome any of the board members else to make that trip and take a look at it.
Before you leave, I do have one question, and, it's funny, Tom's comment, it's funny how it crystallizes some things, all this parking issue, I remember looking at this plan earlier tonight, thinking, it looks like they're trying to cram a lot of crap in here, and they're running out of parking. Trying to get all this stuff in. I know it's gotta be economical for you guys, right? You can't go into a money-losing proposition, you need people in there. But it seems like you are trying to jam a lot of stuff in. So, you mentioned the traffic calming, right? And you didn't want to widen the road. If you widen the road and on the other side, put in basically nose-in parking, that doesn't widen the road, right? I mean, still, the road is the width of the back of the two cars, I'm assuming? When you talk about having the width of the road?
That may be fair in terms of the driveway, but in terms of the overall paved area, the separation of from one side of, call it the sidewalk to the sidewalk, that is what's expanding, even if the drive.
I know it's expanding, but when you try to talk about calming, traffic calming.
Yeah.
Having a lot of cars parked does the same thing, right?
It can, yeah, that's fair.
So, I mean, one of the comments was push the buildings back. And there is a lot of land back there. There's, how many acres? 13 acres back there?
Well, no,
You're talking on the north side.
north
But
side,
that's
there's
across
there's
Bassett.
immediate 6.
Yeah.
Then there's two other properties owned by the town adjacent to it. But there's 6, I believe, that the Affordable Trust.
So there is, I mean, there is a lot of property back there that could make this property bigger.
Well, yeah, and there's also,
Without jamming a bunch of stuff in, running out of parking spots, all that.
is there additional land? Absolutely, but then, I believe, the trust may have plans for a different variety of housing in that back area, and not necessarily another
I'm fine with
development like
that,
this.
I'm fine with that, but do this one right.
Oh, wait, absolutely. Let's start with this one right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely. So would all of a sudden, another 50 feet going this way help things out? Yeah, who knows?
Over 100 feet,
Yeah,
or whatever, right.
yeah, I understand. Okay? Because, yeah, I
Sure.
hear your point of view.
Yeah, I think we're getting at the heart of, everything is about trade-offs, right? Everything, if we're, part of what was submitted and what the trust said that they liked about our RFP response was that they were smaller scale buildings in line with the fabric and the height of this community. There is, I'm not proposing this at all, but just for the sake of the argument, the way that you free up more space for more parking or more open space or whatever is to build multifamily, more higher, taller, denser buildings, which is part of what happened at Wareham. So, where there's 44 units in a single 3-story senior building, which, I wouldn't use the word cramped, but maybe why it felt less cramped to you. So it's a matter of finding balance between the scale of the buildings that a local community has said that they prefer, and a site plan that both functions and helps, we think, with the quality of life of the residents.
Yeah, I do think the way you designed Wareham, even with a fairly good-sized 3-story building, the variety of construction and so forth, that actually, visually, I think aesthetically it worked. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. But his comments regarding, is there another area of land which might help improve the quality in the neighborhood?
Understood.
And that's something for you and the trust to, you guys got a lot going on in this May 11th meeting. I think that's the date you guys picked, but, I'd extend yourself an extra hour for that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think to follow up on Chris's comment, Chris, are you talking about expanding the border to the north?
Yeah, yeah.
That's,
That resolves Bassett Lane.
well, where's
That's
the attorney?
Bassett
I'm
Lane.
gonna ask the question because
Bassett Lane
it's
to go.
Bassett Lane.
Right.
And I thought, or at least I was under the impression that through the Penrose and/or the Affordable Housing Trust over there, Brendan, that someone was gonna determine what is the legal status of Bassett Lane.
That's correct.
We've been asking that question for 3 months.
Yes.
We have an
and
answer.
Brendan, are you here to speak to that? We spoke to that today.
Can't build on a road.
Right, so in our last meeting,
Give up a road.
the town administrator and Christine, town planner, came, we spoke about that. So currently, the TA is actually looking into that, working with the state as well as far as egress onto 124. So that's in the works.
Excellent.
Well, that's 124. We're talking about Bassett Lane.
Correct, I'm sorry, correct.
The
Well,
egress
Bassett
of
Lane does
Bassett,
dump
too.
onto 124 as well.
Well,
so
no, but
it extends. But yes, the whole Bassett Lane question is with the TA right now.
Bassett Lane goes through the middle of the property. To get
Correct.
to 124, you gotta turn right, go up north, about, 200 yards to get to that 124 egress. I'm looking at the top corner.
Correct, let's just go back to Bassett Lane, yes.
Right.
Bassett
I mean,
Lane is in the
towns
works.
relocate roads all the time, right?
Well, not in
They're
this
gonna
town.
do it here in, down in Harwich Center. When they bring in Old Chatham Road in, they're gonna turn it around, they're gonna take,
Well,
relocate the road. Not a big relocation, but.
Okay, if I could, with all due respect, I'm gonna go back to 3 months ago, we asked the question. I
Correct.
thought Penrose was hiring outside counsel.
No,
or
no,
Affordable
no.
Housing
Affordable
Trust.
Trust.
Somebody
We're
was
trying to take care of
hiring
that.
outside counsel to find out if Bassett Lane exists.
We are working on that as we speak.
Okay.
So with council, with town planner, and with the TA.
I mean, should, again, I'm not, besides not being an engineer, I'm not an attorney, but should the town decide that, you know, Bassett Lane is a public road, the selectmen have the ability to, you know, vote in egress or whatever, or eliminate a road. And that could go away if there was a decision to expand north for the Penrose property in agreement with the Affordable Trust. Just that, what Chris brought up. Can we make this thing wider, you know, bigger, to accommodate the 60 apartments
With parking.
with more parking? So that's a question on the table. Again, not a condition from our point of view at this point, just a feedback from the board. One board member, not the board, but one board member raising that issue and that opportunity. So it would certainly be a great time for that to be discussed as well. Okay. All right, there are no questions from the planning director. Frank, do you have any other questions or comments on what you've heard?
No, I'm happy and pleased to be here.
Okay. Paul, any comments on what's going on here tonight?
No. I think that you've gotten a good amount of feedback from the developer. You've asked a lot of very important questions, and they're going to come back to you with responses to those. So I think the process is well on its way. You just need to continue going through it.
Okay. Any final thoughts, questions, or comments from you folks? All right. Haven't closed public session yet. Any other comments from the public that want to speak? Anybody online? I don't see any. So, that being said, any further questions from the board?
No.
All right. And that being the case, now, just one thought here, folks. We did, in my pile of paperwork, Rachel, you gave us minutes for both the January 9th and the February meeting as well, correct?
For the next upcoming regular meeting.
Okay, not for this meeting. So we all have, yeah. So we do have meeting minutes, you know, from the past two hearings, which we'll address at our normal normal April 29th meeting next week. Okay, all right. So I would entertain a motion.
For future dates, what are you gonna ask for?
Oh,
We already have the next date.
yeah, we're going to adjourn, yeah, right now okay. Well, it's item number 7 is
Public comments.
following public comment discussion. So right now, next meeting is May 7th. At the moment, I believe we're going to be looking at, after May 7th, another meeting somewhere between the 5th and the 10th of June. We got to nail that down. That's just coming up, so we'll have that finalized, but I doubt there's going to be another meeting in May, okay? So the next meeting is going to be somewhere in between the 5th and the 10th of June.
It would be between the 4th. You could do the 4th or someone said they're not available in the beginning of June.
Right, that's.
Yeah, I did.
On the 4th.
So you either do late May or.
And I don't
between
believe
the
May
11th
works.
And it does not work.
May doesn't work, so we're into June.
The
Then
last
the-
3 dates.
June 11th, 18th, or 25th.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right, how does, just so you know, the guys here, how does June 11th work out for you guys?
it's fine.
I
Just gotta
responded
rearrange a few
that
things.
that was
In-
fine.
Okay,
in
yeah, I
the
saw that,
evenings,
Dave, thank you.
I don't know, did Al get back to you?
He's not able to at the moment.
I know, but he didn't,
No,
Okay.
okay.
he's home now, so.
The 11th would have to be an evening meeting for me.
An
Absolutely.
evening, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to, it looks like right now, tentatively, we're on June 11th. And on June 11th, obviously, we're probably going to be trying to, additional follow-up here, but the priority is going to be looking at the waivers
Understood.
at that meeting,
Okay.
okay? Any other questions, comments from the board, applicant? I would, at this point, entertain a motion.
I move to continue case 2026-01, Penrose LLC, agent and applicant, Harwich Affordable Housing Trust owner, to a scheduled public hearing on May 7th, 2026 at the Harwich Town Hall, 732 Main Street, starting not before 6 PM in the Griffin Room.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned, it's 9:16. Thanks, folks.